Well, might as well hit go live here. What the hell? Hold on here. Hey, everybody. Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. We are just getting things underway tonight as we are about 5.5 minutes away from launching another live episode of Spaced Out Radio. Our guest tonight will be Joshua Cutchin. We literally have no script. We decided tonight that we aren't going to have a script. So make sure you come on in, say hello to everybody, hang on out, and have some fun with us. Hi, Renee. How are you? What's going on? All right, we know everybody is going to be just kind of hanging on out with us, hanging on out, wondering what to do because, like, we are all a little bored here, trying to figure out what the hell's going to be happening. Treehouse, how you doing? Michigan Rob, what's going on? I know Science Bob is going to pop in here anytime. Watch this. I'm waiting. Mr. Apnea, how are you? Barbers are closed down. Oh, my goodness. Michael, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on in. Joshua Cutchin, once again, our guest tonight on the show. And he's a good guy. Got a nice, tight beard. You never go wrong with a nice, tight beard. Oh, come on. Come on, Josh. You know it's nice. Don't just shy away from it, man.
Yeah, I've tried to pull it off a little bit longer, and I end up just looking like a Hell's Angel, so... Or the most combat averse Hell's Angel that's ever existed.
Hi, Poetically Mistaken. The Phenom, how you doing? Good to have all you here. We're just going anywhere tonight. Josh and I decided if you're just coming in, we don't want a script tonight. And we just want to be able to hang out with you guys, talk about some weird subjects, and just kind of go from there because it's all about the fun and it's all about the woo. We're going to try and hit some power woo tonight. That's where we got to hit. There's peak woo, and we got to get power woo in order to get to that peak woo. So that's our goal for tonight. And, don't hate us for it, but that's kind of what we do. It's kind of what we do. And Josh is pretty damn good at it.
Yeah, we're just gonna freestyle. I mean, we talked about some stuff, and I've thought of some stuff, but since we've talked, so we can touch on any number of any various and sundry things, or just see where the road takes us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Why not? We got about just over 3 minutes to go before we're going to launch Showtime, which is always a lot of fun. And I'll tell you. I'm debating whether or not to go shovel some snow because I got a lot of snow in my backyard, and I'm thinking I could sell this to my American audience for like hundreds upon hundreds of dollars a bucket. Now, it probably won't get there by the time you get there, by the time you order it, probably evaporate or spill or something, but I'm thinking about it. Hey, Waylon. Hey, Corey, how are you, man? Yeah, I don't know. But I do have my green on. For St. Paddy's Day, so nobody can reach through the screen and pinch my ass tonight.
Yeah, I'm negligent in that respect. I think, I'm wearing red and black, so I'm a little bit behind the curve on that.
That's okay. That's all right. Oh, man. Okay, here we go. Shit. Oh, no, I got that on. I'm just making sure I got everything that I need. All right, there's our intro. That's looking good. I always get this like couple of minutes before the showtime panic, like I'm forgetting something. I don't know what I am forgetting, but...
Well, it's when you don't get that you actually have forgotten something.
I know.
My experience, that's the way it usually goes.
I totally know. All right, we're about 90 seconds away here. And now for the first, if this is your first time hearing Josh on the air, you're in for a pleasant surprise, a very pleasant surprise. So make sure you keep it on up and keep tuned in because he's a pretty knowledgeable dude. And, how he does it, I don't know, but he's one hell of a tuba player as well.
Nowadays it's a lot easier because there's nowhere to play.
True.
So just but take all the time and practice.
I know you've posted a couple videos of you playing.
Yeah, I have, and then the leader of the band that I'm in is pretty aggressive with his social media as well. So,
Good.
Yeah, it's not hard to find me out there. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're not talking tuba tonight. We're talking some. We're just gonna get into some shit here. See where it goes. Hey, I want to remind everybody on YouTube that a great way to support this show is a couple of ways. Number one, we have the super chat going on. And number two, we also have our store at spacedoutradio.com/shop. Pick yourself up a great t-shirt, hoodie, socks, you name it. We have it. We got some fantastic, cool logos there as well. And I just want to remind you, it's a great way to help what we do and to promote the fact that you are a good fan of ours. We would greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for supporting us on a nightly basis. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up as well. We would greatly appreciate that if you do not mind. All right, we are about 10 seconds away here. We're going to click that on now. And music will be on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's play some music, shall we? There we go. Here we go. From the snowy mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including Kingdom of Nye Radio and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, doing a little shopping at the SOR Vault, read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. I think we're all in need of a little woo tonight. And who better to bring the woo than author Joshua Cutchin. He is someone who has become a very vocal and respected researcher and author in everything paranormal. He is the author of 3 books, currently working on another one, this one about Bigfoot. It is due out this spring. However, since he's working at home like now, like a lot of us, it may come out sooner. Joshua has been featured on History Channel's Ancient Aliens, his website, joshuacutchin.com. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Mr. Joshua Cutchin, been a few months since we've had you on the air, but we're always happy to have you here, my friend. How you been doing?
Oh, I've been doing well. I mean, everything else in the world aside, I've been doing rather well. I've been shifting focus from, I'm a trained musician, so it was, whenever music is treating me well, I focus on music, and then when something goes sideways on that, I focus on the writing aspect. So safe to say, in the past week or so, that's been a pretty abrupt shift since all my gigs have been canceled for the foreseeable future.
No kidding. You're someone like a lot of Americans and Canadians and people around the world. You're a young man with a young family, and you and your wife are doing your best to kind of keep the household going during these tough times here. How has your life changed over the last couple of weeks?
Well, things started to sort of cancel during the middle of last week is when the first couple of cancellations came in, because I really thought that it was going to be all about, large events and large venues and not some of the smaller places that I play in. But everybody got wind of this pretty quickly. So I am still, cooped up in here. I'm glad I got through Mardi Gras season okay, because that was well needed for my pocketbook. But in the meantime, I'm looking at, I would be surprised if I was, back doing this full time as soon as May. I actually think we're in for the long haul on this, and I have a little bit of inside scoop on that, but that's really what I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so it's been kind of crazy. It's been kind of crazy. I'm equally worried about the economy at this point as I am about the virus itself.
well, you know what? I think we're all worried about everything. I mean, this affects everybody. I mean, if people are locked up in their houses, they're not spending their money, which means that everything from gas stations to car lots to clothing stores are going to all struggle. I mean, we're in times that we've never seen before. But you know, we got to get through it. We got to turn the woo up. We got to give people an opportunity, man, to focus on something else for a little bit here. So that's what we're going to do. You have, since childhood, had an interest in a lot of these key subjects that we talk about on this show. What has always fascinated you with this realm?
Well, you know, I've talked about this, you know, in a couple different places, but I was always a monster kid. I was always into Universal monsters and the Alien and Predator films and anything that was sort of a creature feature. And that's what you know, I've always really been into. I'd never really had the same amount of talent for, you know, drawing, or rather, I certainly didn't nurture it like some of my friends did. So I had to find other outlets, which for me was pretty much just picking up the odd book on cryptozoology or to a lesser degree ufology back in those days. And luckily I had, you know, a pretty open household that was fine with looking into some of that stuff. I found out years later that my dad at some point in his youth had subscribed to the BFRO, Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization newsletter. Right. So, you know, there's always, I guess there might be an inheritable capacity for that, but none of these things were ever off the table. Like you talk to some people who say, you know, my parents would have never let me talk about that or whatnot. And, you know, I was in a period of my time, sort of like I was talking about, where I wasn't playing as much music because I was in a different career path. And I started listening to paranormal podcasts and paranormal radio, and it really rekindled a lot of interest in this. And I, you know, I saw some things that were not really getting talked about in some of these fields and thought, hey, maybe it's a good idea to sort of, you know, use some of this extra time that I have to start writing about that. And, you know, since then, I think my opinion on these things has shifted like 5 or 6 times. But, you know, from where I sit, like, I like the idea of I like the idea of not becoming stagnant
right
in my, you know, in my thinking.
Right.
You know, something that my dear mentor, Greg Bishop, has stressed is that you know, it's always constantly question your own BS belief system, Robert Anton Wilson style, and you know, always make sure that you see yourself growing. And if, you know, somebody asks you something about what you feel about something, and your opinion changes over the years, that's actually a virtue rather than, you know, some sort of flip-flop negativity thing that people would like to spin it as sometimes.
I got to ask you, you are somebody who has literally decided that you want to check into all aspects of this field. You have gone against the grain in being just a UFO guy or a paranormal guy or a Bigfoot guy. Very few are actually taking on the entire subject matter at hand. Why have you decided to do that?
Well, a couple of different things, actually, a couple of different reasons. That's a good question. Part of it has to do with the fact that a lot of the people that I admire and look up to sort of take similar tacks. Folks like Nick Redfern or John Tinney, some cats like that. Yeah. But also, I think that the reason there hasn't been more cross-pollination over the years has a couple of different reasons behind it. I think that, you know, obviously the Bigfoot people think the UFO people are crazy, and the UFO people think that the Bigfoot people are crazy. And, you know, I think that that's got a lot to do with this artificial siloing off. But I think if they'd actually listen to these other stories, they'd start to see some of these similarities. And, you know, talking about shifting viewpoints, there was a time when I was very much a pan-paranormalist, saying that, you know, the more you look at all this, it is all one thing. I'm not really sure I'm really confident saying that anymore. I am still confident in saying that if they aren't sort of different faces on the same thing, these Venn diagrams definitely have some overlaps. And I think that it's those it's not only those shared consistencies, but also the little things that people aren't paying attention to that I think might yield the best results. I mean, if nothing else, I don't think that the current track of ufology and or to a lesser degree cryptozoology have yielded the astonishing results people hoped for when these fields were founded or really started in earnest decades and decades and decades ago. If that it's the one discipline where you can be rewarded by doing the same thing over and over again and still not getting results. Like that's what ufology and cryptozoology are. And not saying that I have, but I'm just saying I feel sometimes there's a resistance to new ideas, which is a little bit baffling to me. I think where a lot of my appreciation for the shared connective tissue came in a couple of certain forms. Last time we were here, we talked about my first book, A Trojan Feast, which was about food and these different encounters, and it was always something that I was aware of in Celtic fairy lore, although it's actually a worldwide taboo. Is this idea that if you take food from the fairy folk, or generally speaking on a worldwide scale, from beings of the other world, you will be trapped with them forever and remain with them forever. And I remember reading a similar story about some tribes in the Pacific Northwest that felt the same way about their analog of Sasquatch. And I said, okay, that's really weird. That's how deep does this rabbit hole go? And as it turns out, it does. Like I said, it's sort of a shared archetype among mankind. So I think that was part of it. But I think another part of it, which I honestly, every time I talk about this, people always sort of, wink and grin and want to jab me in the ribs like I'm not saying something. But I really don't have any experience in this, mostly not by choice. But looking at the similarities of altered states of consciousness in these different encounters, which a lot of people will seize upon and say, "Are you saying that people are hallucinating?" No, I'm not saying that. Don't confuse the door or the key for the room itself, or for what's in the room. It's sort of my attitude. But you see a lot of the similarities. You see similarities in fairy encounters that you see in alien encounters that you see in Bigfoot encounters that you also see in a lot of these altered states of consciousness, which aren't just psychedelics or entheogens. These sort of these substances that release the inner God. You see the same sort of things in transcendental meditation and amongst holy people of every different stripe. So that to me suggested that there's something else really fundamental there. I always found it really interesting. If you look at certain DMT experiences, I can find you alien abduction experiences and fairy abduction experiences that are a real just one-to-one match to an absurd degree. So those are two of the things. And then I'll also say that I was really fascinated with the comparativist works of people like Jacques Vallée, who definitely was one of the earliest and most comprehensive looks with his book Passport to Magonia of how alien lore and fairy lore have some real strong characteristics. Like that's one of those Venn diagrams that I think is almost a complete circle. And after I was we can get into this if you want to, but I really do contend that anything you find in one has an analog in another. And that's sort of where the growth of my last book came out of, Thieves in the Night. I was looking at two things. I'm like, I don't see these in alien abduction lore, but I see them in fairy lore, or I see this in fairy lore but not in alien abduction lore. Let me reconcile this and see if there's a way. And sure enough, there really is a lot of overlap there as well.
I got to ask you were up until, and I know this is a little bit of a sensitive topic for you, up until a few months ago, you were very involved with UFO Twitter, which is, I wouldn't say it's snarky chat that I'm used to on Twitter. It could be a very, very ugly place where if you don't agree with certain aspects of the field of ufology that you get ganged up on, you get a little verbally beat up on things, and I'm just curious, you decided to just delete your Twitter account and move on to the next phase and get out of that type of drama. Why did you make that choice?
Because it was making me a person that I didn't want to be. So there were a couple of different reasons for it, but that's the primary reason. I I like to think of myself as an affable and relatively non-confrontational person, and a passionate person. But obviously, you can't get those qualities across in such a short number of characters. And there was just a lot of people on there who were just so sure of themselves. And one of my driving philosophies has been that the world would be much better if we all stopped and said to ourselves once a day, wait a minute, am I the jerk? Am I the jerk in this situation? Wait. So there were a lot of people who just seemed very sure of themselves and weren't even really sort of open to discussing other topics. One of my things that I always pushed back was whenever somebody would talk about craft or propulsion systems or engines or any of these things. And I say, well, a lot of these are assumptions. I mean, there's some eyewitness testimony, but we're still, trying to figure this out. And, you'd have thought that I had walked into Vatican Square and, said, "Hail Satan" or something. It's that sort of reaction. And, there's no shortage of ad hominem attacks. And honestly, I would say things about older books, older cases, other things that people hadn't considered, and the response was almost unanimously, "Well, you're an elitist because you're reading these books." This is from somebody who got everything they know about UFOs or whatever on YouTube, which is fine. There's some great information on YouTube, but there's also a lot of garbage, and it's the same problem that we run into everywhere. Nowadays is that people don't spend nearly enough time reading things that they disagree with or listening to things that they disagree with. Like I try to go out of my way, to get a pretty broad smattering of different political opinions from friends and news outlets, because I think really the truth does lie in the middle that no one's covering, and you'll find good points in one and good points in the other. So if you think that UFOs are extraterrestrials, which is not my personal feelings on the topic, you should still go out and read books that approach it from that angle. Similarly, if people think that, most of John Keel's research is a load of hooey, then, go out and read that too. But I remember there was one thread where I was talking about Keel and they're like, "Oh, is he the guy that says that they're all monsters?" I haven't read any of his books, but that idea sounds stupid. And it's like, can you just look at what you just said? So it was that sort of intellectual incuriosity that just doesn't really wash well with me, and it certainly doesn't wash well with me after I've had a couple of drinks and I'm hanging out on Twitter.
Yes.
So it was making me a person I didn't want to be. I had a couple of friends who came up to me like, "Josh, you're kind of being a little bit belligerent." So I'm like, well, you know what? If I had the discipline to actually use it just as as sort of a mouthpiece for my work and stuff, that would be one thing. But I don't trust myself to be that disciplined, and B, I'm pretty steady with my workflow, but sometimes there are months at a time where there's nothing to talk about. I mean, my last blog post was in October simply because I've got this other side of my life with music, and also, two twin boys who just turned 1 year old.
I hear you.
So, pulled a bunch of different directions. So it was either I'm on there all the time with my personal thoughts, or I'm on there once every 4 or 5 months. So I'm just like, let's just pull the plug on this. And honestly,
you regret it?
No, well, we were talking about some of the stuff that's going on in the community right now, and I really can't say I do. I feel like a lot of that conversation seems to have stagnated and is really fixated on a lot of the same topics that they were,
right?
That at least back when I left 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah. Well, I have to say this. It's always dangerous for a man in 3 areas, Twitter, that is. Number 1, if you're already worked up throughout your day. Number 2, if you just wake up and it's the first thing you look at. And number 3, if you're bored sitting on the bathroom having some quiet man time. That's where Twitter is the most dangerous for most men out there. Hate to say it that way, but it is very truthful. But I mean, I actually commend you on stepping away, because, there are, it was a losing battle, and it didn't matter whether or not you were correct or not. The attacks, like you said, the ad hominem attacks on Twitter would get extremely personal, extremely vicious, And I saw some of those attacks on you. And I was like, where is this coming from? This is not the Josh that I know. Like, why would you say this when you could just literally, like I've said to a couple of those people, do you want my number? Call me. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'd all be a lot more, affable in person, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because you can't say on Twitter to someone face to face or ear to ear. You just can't.
Mm-mm. No, absolutely. Well, if you're not, a sociopath. And look, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that my hands are clean at all, because I would, sometimes when I got it, I would go right back. So again, it was making me into somebody that I didn't really want to be. But yeah, there are some people whose first, reaction would be to launch into ad hominem attacks. I can think of one individual who, whenever you said something you disagreed with them, they'd be like, you're irrelevant. It's like, what?
Oh,
what
yes.
happened? Like,
Yes.
it's just, that's your go-to thing. And it just, the reality is, I mean, I say this with all the love in my heart for ufology. To the average person on the street, we're all irrelevant.
Exactly.
It's my good friend Tim Banal has often said that, let's say that we have some sort of disclosure tomorrow.
Yes.
They don't care about the opinions of UFO Chaser 125 on Twitter. They want to hear from Michio Kaku and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and nobody cares about. There might be a couple of people at the top of ufology that are going to get that talking head interview, but the rest of us are just going to fall right by the wayside. Especially somebody who talks about some of the weird stuff that I talk about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to ask you, because I think you just segued into a good part of the conversation here with the way people are reacting towards the coronavirus right now, and what we're seeing, and the way we're seeing people beating up people in supermarkets and ripping toilet paper out of old people's hands and pushing children. I mean, it is chaos out there. And yet we have a population out there who says, oh yes, we could totally handle aliens landing here. We're prepared for it. We want this to happen. Do you think, in turning it more into a woo type topic, do you think that the main population is ready for any type of ET contact, considering what we are seeing happen today?
I obviously am sympathetic to and have a lot of friends and acquaintances and whatnot in conspiracy culture. And I really do, like I said, sympathize with a lot of that stuff. But even somebody like me who has been kind of halfway expecting something like this to happen for, years, you get in the thick of things, and there's just been this kind of little cloud that's been following me around all day. Not really sure of who to believe and what to think. And you look at some of the stuff that the people are saying. So I'll go on the record saying right now, personally, for me, my own viewpoint is that there's not a lot that's being overblown about this. My wife works at CDC, and we've talked about some stuff, and she's an epidemiology major, and this is not. I think that this is a real thing, but I personally, and this isn't me speaking for my wife or her employer, I personally think it's entirely possible that it has some markers of it being a bioweapon. That's just my own personal opinion. But at the same time, the reason that a lot of people are rolling their eyes about whether or not this is real or not, and please everybody take this seriously because it could get nasty. But the reason that people aren't taking this seriously or not is because we're really through the looking glass on a lot of this media consumption. And, I don't care if it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden who comes out and says, look, there's this, my friend Zeblak from, Zebel Ganubi. He's here, he's one of the star people here. Unless people see that for themselves in person, you're going to have the same thing happening. They're going to be like, oh, it's an op. They aren't really here. And you're going to have other people who are like, no, that they really are introduced. This is disclosure. So it's always going to be like that. Number one.
Yeah. Quickly. We got 10 seconds.
And number two, from an existential standpoint, this is not nearly as bad as that would be. So no, I don't think we're prepared at all.
No way, man. No way. Well, let's continue that talk right after this, man, because we got to go to break. Our guest tonight, Joshua Cutchin, author of 3 books, a Bigfoot book coming right around the corner this spring. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. We're having a free-for-all tonight. Continue on with Are We Ready for ET Contact? Looking at the way we're treating people today. More with Spaced Out Radio coming up after this. We are so not ready, dude. So not ready.
Oh, no. There's no way we are.
Oh, no. You know, when I see, you know, somebody pushing an 80-year-old woman to rip toilet paper out of her hands, that's not being ready. That's not even being human.
Well, and you know, there's not even a religious component along this,
No.
and I mean, I'm sure that obviously people are spinning it that way to a certain degree, but you know, there's not that, like I said, that sort of deep-seated, oh my gosh, what if everything I've been taught my entire life is wrong, or thinking that the alien standing there is the devil, which again is something that I don't necessarily disagree with because I'm not a big extraterrestrial hypothesis guy, but like the people who would just absolutely just be gutted of their complete identity.
Oh yeah.
And lash out in violence. I mean, it's nuts.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg if the aliens arrive, man. We haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg. And that is what's kind of intriguing. I mean, my God, like just seeing the way people are treating people right now. And I'm not even a pacifist, man. I'm not even a pacifist. I could barely breathe out of my nose because of the amount of hockey fights I got in back in the day. So, I like a good fisticuffs every now and again, but at the same time, there's a point where you got to be human,
Yeah.
There's a point where you gotta, take care of thy neighbor and all that good stuff. And watching people like bowl over, like supermarkets should not have to open up and have special hours for special needs and seniors just to make sure that they're taken care of. I mean, what kind of, pardon my language here, I'll say it on YouTube, but what kind of fucked up humanity is that? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I completely agree. And, I think that, I'm of the kind of disposition that, let's say you need to take off some time and spend less time out and about in, public establishments because it might save some people's lives. I can't imagine the mindset that is, well, this just kills old people. I'm going to go to the bar.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
right.
Okay.
Right.
Have you ever tried cooking at home and, tried to stay at home and read a book? I'm not talking a lot about books tonight. I guess you can tell what my plans are for the next foreseeable future. It's really disheartening. I think I saw something that was posted, online that said, we really did fail our first test at something like this because we fell into our base instincts. And, it's interesting to me how a lot of these perceived social problems that we've had too are just completely fallen by the wayside. Like nobody's worried about these things that really, tend to make you roll your eyes for being overly sensitive. And that's probably a little bit too political for us to talk about, but it's amazing how oh no, this is something that actually threatens every aspect of our lives. This is actually what is important,
Reminds me of that old South Park episode where they get stuck in an avalanche inside the schoolhouse or something like that, and within hours they start cannibalizing, because they have to eat.
Oh yeah, I mean, if anybody, I hate to say it, but it's one of my favorite horror films, and it's bleak as hell. But if anybody wants to take a look at what the world is starting to look like, it's The Mist. Not the television show, but the film, I think did a really, really good job of capturing that sense of dread in the pit of your stomach.
Oh, for sure. For sure, man. All right, where are we at? We got about 2.5 minutes here. Yes, we will be getting to Bigfoot with Josh tonight. Waylon, we will be. We'll be getting to a lot of really cool topics tonight. So stay tuned. We got lots of time, and we're going to make it all happen because old Davey here loves me some Bigfoot, man. Once you've seen a Bigfoot, you are addicted to Bigfoot. And I am an addict. So
yeah.
So
some days I think I want to see it, and some days I don't.
Oh, dude, when in October of 2018, or was it September 2018, my buddy Mike and my other buddy Mark, we actually had we were surrounded by them. We got surrounded by them, and we ended up getting the hell out. Now, looking back on it and talking tough and everything now, I wish we would have stayed just to see what would have happened. But I'll tell you, man, we were being triangulated out of the area. And just like you hear all of these experts or researchers say how they kind of triangulate you, two make noise and one stays silent. We never saw the third one, but we sure had not communication, but we were sure hearing the other two. That is for sure. And that is a wicked trip, man. I want that to happen so bad again. So bad.
Yeah, I don't think I've talked about. So I actually kind of have had maybe something a little bit Bigfooty, but it's, I'm the kind of mindset where I'm just skeptical enough, despite, really suspecting that there's an absolute an absolute truth to this stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
Hold that for the show, because I don't want to ruin it for everybody. Hey, YouTube, as we're about to come back on here, I want to remind you that a great way to support this show is we have the super chat on. You can click the super chat right there. On there, you can give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate that. Also, great way to support us. Go to our website, spacedoutradio.com. Order yourself up a t-shirt or something along those lines today. Hey, we're going to get going here with the second half hour of the show coming up right now. Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Still not free of the snow, but that's okay. That's okay. I don't mind it. Hey, I hope you had a great day just like I did today. And I want to remind you that if you are looking for our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up daily on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Joshua Cutchin is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He's an author. Got 3 books out. One more on Bigfoot coming out this spring. His website, joshuacutchin.com. Doesn't even need the CA for Canada because he's just that good. That good.
Don't know about that for sure.
Now, I want to spend just a couple more minutes on this, and then we're going to start talking about Bigfoot here.
Sure, absolutely.
Right before the break, we were talking about whether or not we're ready for any sort of ET contact. Because for years we've been hearing, if people just tuned in, we've been hearing people talk about, oh yeah, well, mankind can handle this. Mankind can definitely do that. And yet we see how we're handling this situation now, and it's not too good. It's not looking too pleasant out there. And I'm going to assume that you're of the feeling in the same ilk, because I never get to use the word ilk enough on this show, that you believe that we're not very ready as well.
Yes, I am definitely of the same ilk.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about a little bit about this off air, but this is, we're seeing the way that this is, and it's not a full blown panic yet. And it's still pretty bad. Imagine if this was something with a mortality rate like Ebola coming through in the way that people would be acting. But also there isn't that sort of existential dimension that you would have if there was, an actual disclosure saying that, guess what, we're not alone in the universe. Because I think that a lot of people would, on a deep psychological level, would be really challenged by that. And would probably act even more rashly than we've seen, throughout all this.
Right. Well, I can only hope, because when I take a look at everything here and the panic that's starting to set up, and I'm not trying to promote the panic or anything like that, but it's something we have to look at. Aliens, man, they could be coming. I'm sure somewhere up in space there is a disc sitting there filled with grays, and they're like, oh, this is awesome. This is great reality TV. They have to be. They have to be.
Yeah, I saw a cartoon on Facebook that was it said, we know, hey, Gray was walking into these two female Grays sitting on the couch, and he goes, what are you guys watching? And they go, season 2020 of Earth. It's really getting intense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah. Did you see that meme about Bigfoot? Quarantining himself in the forest.
Yeah, the number one social distancer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Anything different there? What made you write a book about Bigfoot, man? What made you write a book about Bigfoot?
Because I don't have a lot of Bigfoot in my books, honestly. Each of my books really has just a portion of it dedicated to Bigfoot. And A Trojan Feast, it's scattered throughout, but there's not that much. Thieves in the Night has one chapter on it, and the Brimstone Deceit's the one that has the most, which, by the way, anybody who's really interested in Bigfoot, to this day, I will say it is the most comprehensive, in-depth look at Bigfoot smells. An entire third of that book is dedicated to Bigfoot. But I didn't really... I feel like some people in ufology know me, and some people who are Forteans who know me, but there are not a lot of people who are cryptozoologists that I really have a relationship with. And so, it's partially to alleviate that. My original idea was to not write another book for a while because, my wife was pregnant with the boys. And anyway, my friend Timothy Renner, who has the podcast Strange Familiars, which is a wonderful show. I really recommend people check it out. Approached me in September of 2018 and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing a book just on weird Bigfoot. That's what I'd be calling it for forever, is the Weird Bigfoot book. And I said, yeah, let's do that, actually. So I sort of tried to get my part done in record time because I was well aware that my life was going to change in terms of the amount of time that I could do things. But I ended up getting the lion's share of it done by about March, and we've been sort of kicking things back and forth. And as I hear things, I'll add things here and there. But it's not a weird Bigfoot book. It's going to be two weird Bigfoot books because it's just one of these books is about the length of my books, which are about 10,000 words long nowadays is what I'm averaging. So we decided to split it in half. Volume 1 is mostly focusing on the intersection of different folklore traditions and Bigfoot. Folklore traditions that Bigfoot, the cryptozoology hasn't really looked at in regards to Bigfoot. The way that I refer to it, and I've gotten chastised by my friend Greg Bishop for this, but I think it puts people in the right mindset of this, is that it's kind of taking a passport to Magonia approach to Bigfoot in regards to, poltergeists, the fairy faith and witches, ghosts. One of the things that it still has me gobsmacked every time I read this last chapter of this upcoming book is my friend Tim's connection that he's made between anomalous women in white ghosts, this very specific archetype of the woman in white, and how often they approach and they appear rather in conjunction with places that have a lot of Bigfoot sightings. And of course, some people are going to listen to me and say, well, I didn't see that in my encounter. And that's absolutely true. I've been driving cars for 18 years and I've never had a blowout either, knock on wood. Doesn't mean that they don't happen. But anyway, so he really was a great influence on spearheading that. And this first, the first book is all laid out. I need to do an index and we need to, press send and send it off to Amazon. But it should be finished. I'm thinking April. Tim's thinking May. So who knows? Maybe late April is where it'll be. But it's the time is nigh for that. And then the second volume, which will come out 6 months to a year down the road, I think, is all about weird Bigfoot evidence, which is lights, some of the vocalizations and mimicry that you'll hear, altered states in Bigfoot, which a lot of people haven't talked about, I don't think. Some sort of ritual magic aspects involving Bigfoot, and obviously the anomalies that you find with toes and trackways and all those things, as well as some specialized case studies, and also a real sort of George Hansen trickster in the paranormal look at the Bigfoot phenomena and hoaxing as a whole, and how that's an expression of the trickster archetype. So 2 volumes, Where the Footprints End, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1, Where the Footprints End, Volume 1, Folklore, is coming out nigh. The time is nigh, finally. And this is, I'm quite proud of this. And to make matters even better, Timothy is, in addition to being a talented musician and podcaster and researcher and an author, he also is a wonderful illustrator using a very distinctive style of pen and ink. And he's actually done quite a few illustrations throughout the book as well. So it'll
Very
be
cool.
It's going to be a lovely artifact, is the way that I've been referring to it. But yeah, I guess the real impetus for this, I lay it at Tim's feet, but I think that it really ties into that connectivity of the paranormal aspect, which we were talking about earlier. I just find it really fascinating, and I feel like this might be me being overly critical, but I feel like cryptozoology, but especially the Bigfoot community, are the last people who are going to at least publicly talk about a lot of this stuff. I mean, I know there's some people fighting the good fight out there, like Tom Powell, and I know that Ron Moorhead has touched upon this some, and there's some people here and there, but I've been saying for years that the last people of all the weird subjects, of all the woo subjects that are out there, as much as I hate that term, cryptozoology is going to be the last one to actually look at the role of altered states of consciousness in these encounters. Ufology has finally gotten there, and I think they're finally open to talking about those sort of things. But cryptozoology,
that's easy to see, though, considering that those in the Bigfoot field who think they're conducting anything scientific when they're not, all right, are trained to believe that they're looking for a monkey. And a monkey doesn't create a lot of consciousness, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, but I feel like there's a lot of pushback among a lot of really cryptozoologists that I respect who say you can't explain one unknown with another, and that's fine. I totally get that. But you can't ignore similarities between two unknowns, or worse yet, which is what a lot of Bigfooters, I think, do, is they go in with the assumption that it is just a giant monkey. So if you saw it do something like, if you saw it dematerialize in front of you, which, we get into all these subtopics in the book of cloaking and invisibility and levitation and all these phasing, all these things that you hear in some of these outlier reports. They'll take that and they'll say, "Oh, well, that was the effects of infrasound." Well, maybe, but at the same time, if a person is staring at this thing and it disappears, you've got to acknowledge that has precedence in other aspects of folklore, and even worse yet, you might be ignoring some indigenous folklore that explicitly says these things can disappear.
Absolutely. And the worst part about it is there's a lot of evidence out there, whether it's photographic, whether it's video. There's a lot of strange anomalous stuff out there that is being absolutely thrown in the garbage because it doesn't suit someone's opinion or their own personal belief. And as long as we are judging this topic by opinion, how can we move any further ahead?
Well, exactly. And how damning is it that the predominant opinion hasn't really yielded any objective proof, and that's been my sort of rallying cry around a lot of these different topics, is that if you look at the developments that have been made in terms of proving, or in terms of suggesting the reality of psi phenomena, it's almost an open and shut case. I think it was John B. Alexander, and your opinions of him may vary on the subject, but I think it was John Alexander who said that there's more evidence for the efficacy of, more evidence for the existence of psi phenomena than there is for the efficacy of ibuprofen. It's in terms of how rigorous the clinical studies have been and how well controlled they've been. And, for every, five, psychics with a neon sign, advertising their business by the side of the road, there are people that are actually doing good laboratory work. I'm thinking specifically of Dean Radin, Daryl Bim, some of the near-death experience researchers, Ian Stevenson's work, the late Ian Stevenson's work on reincarnation. A lot of these things really are super compelling. And I think that once you have that psi component, once you have that, once you have the idea that your consciousness is not just an epiphenomena of your brain, but that actually comes from somewhere else, so that blows the doors off of everything that we talk about. Bigfoot doesn't have to be a monkey. UFOs don't have to come from another star system. And not saying that I'm right, but I'm saying that, there's always this X factor of consciousness that enters every interaction that you have if your consciousness comes from somewhere else, if that makes any degree of sense.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense, Josh, because the way we look at it and the way we are going to find things is by studying each and every facet. And it doesn't matter whether, like I got a stupid theory out there and it's only my own. I have no problem stating it. And that is, why are the pictures always blurry? Why are the videos always blurry? It can't always be that it's a bad photographer or a bad videographer. Maybe they're shaking because they're nervous or scared or whatever. But what about the possibility that this creature has the ability to cloak itself or to project something out there to electronics that causes a blurriness effect? I don't know, but it's stuff that has to be looked at. As weird as it may sound, there are people who are wondering about this, John Tenney being one of them.
No, I mean, absolutely. And I'm sort of banging the weird Bigfoot drum, and that's not me saying, I'm rallying behind the idea that Bigfoot can't be an animal is probably what it sounds like. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if it's an animal, it's got to be really, really super weird. But yeah, and if you look at, we're talking about the interconnectivity of things. If you look, there are some literal stories, and don't ask me to cite them right now. I just can tell you that I've heard them from people of people who have been about to take a photo of a UFO, a great photo of a UFO, and their camera doesn't work, or like the battery sapping phenomena that you find amongst ghost hunters. And it does seem that whatever these things are, not to say this thing is, like it might not necessarily be this monolithic thing, but whatever these things are, seem to have a preternatural, almost godlike awareness of when they're being watched and how they're being watched, and exercise a certain degree of control over that. I mean, it's sort of a cliche at this point, but if you're having trouble with Bigfoot on your property, put up some trail cams and you won't have trouble anymore. And the amount of, like, we should have gotten, if trail cams were going to give us a photo of Bigfoot, we should have gotten it by now. And again, some people are going to take this, some people who aren't familiar with me and my views are going to take this and say, well, he doesn't believe in Bigfoot, he doesn't believe in any of this stuff. No, I'm just saying that I believe in this. I think that there's more to it that is operating outside the bounds of what we can understand, or at least exercises control in every situation as much as it wants to. The analogy that I've given is, if I have a pencil in my hand, and I don't want one of my 1-year-old boys to have it, but I want him to hold it, and I want him to get as close to it as I want him to get close to. He's not going to get it from me. Like, it's just not going to happen. If I'm focused on that as a topic, if I put it down as one thing. But if I've got this pencil in my hand, I can dangle it in front of him. I can let him smell it. I can let him touch it. I can do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I control what happens to that pencil. And I think that the way that these things interact with us in terms of encounters are just like me and one of my sons and the pencil. It's that really that layer of complete control that sadly a lot of people who don't believe in this stuff don't believe can happen, because we're human beings and we're the master of everything, apparently. Yes,
and the big idea behind it that I scratch my head over is how convinced a lot of these researchers are that we're dealing with an animal, that we're dealing with something that has been hidden for years in the forest. And we have no clue, no proof of that. We have no proof that it's interdimensional. We have no proof that the First Nations people or indigenous people are correct. We have no proof of anything. We just know that there are experiences, and right in the middle of nowhere, some really giant screwed up footprints that shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, my problem is, my problem is when people get really, really dogmatic about what does and doesn't exist. Now, again, if you're an experiencer, I'm not going to come in and say what you did or didn't see, but I'm going to say, well, some people have problems with what you might have. Some people think that, they have some problems with this explanation for Bigfoot because of X or Y, or some people have experienced the complete opposite, or some people have experienced the same thing that you have. I try to walk this line of being sort of relatively agnostic about what these things are, while at the same time acknowledging experiencers. And even worse, in the case of people who have been abducted, alien abduction, are victims. It's the last place in our society where you can still shame the victim and get away with it, and everybody will laugh along with you.
Oh yes, and that's the beauty of my Twitter crowd. They're laughing at me right now. I absolutely love them. I do. I love them. But we've got about 3 minutes here before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Joshua Cutchin is our guest tonight. Josh, when we come back, I want to get into some Bigfoot stories that you have researched that are real interesting, because our people here absolutely love the stories that people like yourself have researched. So I do want to get into that. But what do you think we're looking for? What is Joshua Cutchin's idea of what we are looking for in the forests?
See, that's such a hard thing to pin me down on, and you did it right here at the break. I'm going to say something, and I would like to put a pin in it and circle right back around to it.
Sure.
I think that my current thinking, which hopefully, again, as I've mentioned to you, will be completely different in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time. It's definitely different than it was a while back. Is that kind of everything that we're looking at is one big ghost story, and it's not as simple as Bigfoot ghosts or plesiosaur ghosts in Loch Ness. It's a little bit different than that, but that's kind of, sometimes it really does feel that way, and I can sort of walk myself through that logic when we have a little bit more time, if you want to.
Well, we got we got like 2 minutes here right now, so why don't you get started?
Okay. Well, okay. Let me put it this way. So if there are such strong similarities between the fairy folklore and aliens,
yes,
and as terms of similarities, everything from height to hybrids to the experience to the environment to even alien implants, I can find an analog in fairy lore. So that to me is sort of settled. If there are these similarities there, and there's an association of the fairies with the dead in a lot of cultures, and there's these occasions where where dead relatives and family members are seen in the alien abduction experience, as Anne Strieber famously once told Whitley, I think this has something to do with death. And there are these similarities to both these things that you see in the Bigfoot phenomena, as Tim and I talk about in this new book. Then where does that leave us, other than the fact that these things are all definitely connected? And then you look at the similarities of alien abductions and the near-death experience. And I'm being very reductive when I say everything's a ghost story, because people think of ghosts as being one specific thing, the soul of a dead person still walking here on Earth. But what I really am trying to refer to is I kind of think that it's a spirit ecosystem is what we're looking at. That's a term that my friend Gordon White uses. And again, people will hear that and they'll bring their own set of bags to that. A spirit ecosystem. So you think there's angels and demons, and no, I don't think it's like that. I think it's much more akin to, I think there's some souls of the dead involved, and I think that there are some good agents and some bad agents and a whole lot of agents in between who are indifferent and could go either way. Or, again, to use an analogy that Gordon White uses, we've perceived sharks in the ocean as being evil, but sharks aren't necessarily evil. A shark is going to shark. It might ruin your life.
Absolutely.
It might ruin your life, but it's doing its own thing. It's just being itself. So that's kind of where I'm falling with a lot of this stuff.
I don't blame you, because I can tell you right now, I am not going into the ocean. I am a meal. I'm not an appetizer. I'm a meal. Josh, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Joshua Cutchin continues the Bigfoot talk in hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio next. He's going to tell us some stories of where his research has gone. It's going to be a good one. Stay tuned. Hour 2 right around the corner. All right. There's hour 1. Little Davey Altman. How you doing, buddy? Josh's next book will be coming out with Tim in April or May, Josh. One of the two, right?
It's really straddling that line. It's probably going to be late April, early May, but it won't go past early May.
Right.
Shouldn't.
Well, I got to run my dogs outside quickly here, Ben, because at the top of the hour they like to go do their outside thing, and I'm the only one awake in the house right now. So I'm going to do that. While we're doing that, why don't, if you have a quick couple-minute Bigfoot story that you want to share exclusively with the YouTube crowd, that'd be kind of cool until I get back.
Oh, I was actually going to go to the restroom myself.
All right, well, you go do that.
I'll do that, and I'll be back ASAP. How about that?
Okay, you do that. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Josh is going to be back before I will, and he'll give you a quick Bigfoot story here. Hold on.
Yes. All right. So a quick little story here, because there's actually one that's a little bit longer that I would really like to tell everybody, but I'll tell this quick one, because it really surprised me that it existed at all. So one of the things we look at in the book is, again, similarities between Bigfoot and ghost lore, and there's actually a really strong tradition of what are called hairy ghosts, but along with that, you start looking at some aspects of, traditionally held witchcraft legends, which, not the traditional understanding of witchcraft. That's, completely different, but like the old, nasty witchcraft thing. And sleep paralysis and the old hag syndrome, which I have about 10 examples of Bigfoot seen in sleep paralysis episodes, which is interesting. But on Oak Island, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with in Nova Scotia, it's probably rumored to be one of the most famous buried treasures in the world. People have spent decades digging for buried treasure on Oak Island, and they have never found it for whatever different reason, but usually because it's been booby trapped to hell and back. But there was a gentleman by the name of I believe his name was Dunfield. No, Dunfield owned it. It was Kaiser. This guy named Jim Kaiser, who was sort of hired as a watchman on Oak Island. He had a little watchman's cabin there, And he said that he put some wood on the fire, and when he woke up at one point in the middle of the night, and he could not breathe. And there was this giant red-eyed thing that was completely covered in tight black curly hair sitting on his chest, and it was holding him down. It would just told him, don't ever come back. He just smiled on his face and told him, don't ever come back. And he, said he could even smell it, and it was just insanely intense. And he actually, sadly enough, because of that, he quit his job and fell into alcoholism and committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
Several years later. But I find that really interesting for a couple of different reasons. It's sleep paralysis Bigfoot that just disappears at the end of this encounter. But B, Oak Island, this storied location that has this buried treasure. And then you think about that, and you think about the number of Bigfoot sightings that occur in the vicinity of mines, which are a variation on that buried treasure idea. Sometimes there are places that have buried treasure in the same vicinity that have a lot of Bigfoot activity. It's pretty crazy. But then you unpack that further and you say, well, what lived at the end of the rainbow and guarded that pot of gold? Well, it's a leprechaun. Exactly. And there's a strong tradition of fairies and ghosts and all sorts of things hiding buried treasure as well. So again, not saying that Bigfoot isn't real, but saying that he factors into this archetypal rogues gallery of things that are attracted to certain conditions. Is sort of where I am with that. And I found that to be really interesting because I'd never heard this story of Bigfoot on Oak Island, but there you have it.
That is interesting. I hadn't heard that one either. I hadn't heard that one at all. Wow.
There's a lot of stuff like that in this book, and one of the cool things that I really think about Tim is that he, for various different reasons, I have never really gotten into field work. I was actually, ironically enough, looking to change that this week before we went under lockdown. So, I'm looking to change that and do some more field work because that's definitely a hole in my experience. I'm more of a researcher than I am an investigator by far, even though I have done some things here and there. But Tim does a lot of firsthand on-site stuff, and there's some stuff in these books that has never been mentioned or put into print anywhere. So it's really exciting to have that aspect of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Tim's got great hair as well. We can't forget that. He's got fantastic hair and a great beard. We respect that a lot around here. So actually, I was just on with him on Sunday night. He called me up on Skype. He's like, "Hey, come on my podcast." I'm like, "Okay." So that was
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it was just like I was just sitting here, and all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, you available?" And I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "Okay, calling you in," and I'm like, "Oh, cool. Okay." So I did.
Yeah.
All right, hold on 1 second here because we're on in 10 seconds. Hey, YouTube, we're coming back with hour number 2. I want to quickly remind you, a great way to support this show is go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, grab yourself a great T-shirt or something like that. Also, a great way is we do have the Super Chat open. If you feel that we deserve anything, put it on in there. We'd love to have that. Thank you. Twitter, all right, here we go, hour 2.
And on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. Thank you so much for tuning us in. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates as well as the digital side on Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching live as well. We would greatly appreciate that. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. But first, I got to do the password. The Desert Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Exismus. I totally butchered that. Exismus. There we go. Exismus is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and keeping up to date on the news with Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. We are talking with author Joshua Cutchin tonight. We're talking Bigfoot right now because this spring he's got a brand new Bigfoot book coming on out with Timothy Renner, who's got fantastic hair, by the way. So you definitely want to get that. I'm excited about it. Josh, right before the break, I'd asked you, what do you think Bigfoot actually is? You wanted to continue with that answer.
Well, so I think that if you look at, because the whole Bigfoot thing gets even more complicated when you look at worldwide folk traditions of the wild man and the wild man as an archetype. And then you start looking into the way that the wild man as an archetype came from, fauns and sylvesters and all these sort of cloven-footed, forest dwellers that were covered in hair from the old world. And again, this is not saying that weren't Native American traditions. What I'm saying is that every culture has their own wild man archetype. But then, in the old world at least, you see, this very clear tradition, which many folklorists say exists in terms of fauns and satyrs being predecessors of the wild man archetype, and the way that fauns and satyrs were also closely associated with pagan Roman, Roman and Greek, but with pagan, fertility rites. So they got sort of turned into the devil, and then in some traditions, the devil is literally a large hairy ape, and the wild man is sometimes the devil or a demon, explicitly called as much, also in the Americas, and the wild woman is often a witch, and it becomes this big stew before you even get all that imported over here and grafted onto Native American, beliefs as well. Although you'll find similar things. I mean, there are several traditions that describe Bigfoot in terms of being like a large hairy witch, which is something like a rabbit hole that I tumbled down into. But again, the things that really fascinate me about the unexplained are not necessarily the veracity of any individual case, but the consistency between cases that, theoretically shouldn't be there. And that's generally speaking the argument that I try to make, is not that a case X or Y is, objectively real or completely related accurately, but rather that the consistencies are, astoundingly strong, and they really shouldn't be if these things are being made up whole cloth. So, you look at, there are a couple of, here's a favorite example of mine. There are Native American traditions where there is an ogress, specifically thinking of Sonokwa from the I believe it's either the Quakital or the Tlingit tribe. Anyway, a Bigfoot analog in the New World. Big hairy ogress, which is basically another word for a witch, grabs little boys and drops them into a basket on her back. Now, if you look at certain Nepalese traditions, the Migoi, which is sort of a Yeti variant, is a giant hairy creature that grabs children and tosses them into a hole on its back, as opposed to did I say a hole with the Sonokwa? Should have been a basket. Denoskwa drops the kids into a basket on its back, the Migoi into a hole in its back, and believe it or not, fairy traditions in the old world, I'm thinking of like the Skogskra, and also some other Italian folklore, the fairies eat through a hole in their back. The Skogskra of Norwegian folklore will never let you see her from her behind because she's got this hollow back behind her. So stuff like that I find fascinating. The repetition of that motif across cultures that really should have had minimal contact and yet have these ideas baked in consistently is really astounding. There's similar traditions with some wild men in South America that have rear-facing feet. You'll find that same sort of tradition among some people who talk about the orang pendek in island Southeast Asia, which is one of those things that cryptozoologists say is definitely a relic monkey, but it has backwards-facing feet. Well, again, the Migoi, in this case, is described in some encounters as having these backwards-facing feet. What do we make of that? I don't know. Do I really think that there are apes out there with backwards-facing feet? Probably not. If it's some sort of weird spirit phenomena / archetypal manifestation of the collective unconsciousness, it might have backwards-facing feet. I don't know any of this. But what I'm saying is that, across time, across cultures, there is this consistency, which sounds almost like I'm stealing a direct quote that I have in the book from Jeffrey Kripal. But that's really where a lot of my interest come from, is in this consistency of these motifs that really shouldn't be consistent yet remain that way throughout different cultures that are widely separated.
Well, one of the big arguments out there is the fact that, with all these legends and lore that are out there, especially from indigenous people from North America right around the world, is they're just stories. There is no proof. There's no photographic evidence. There's no video evidence. How do we combat that or can we in researching these phenomena if we don't have any proof outside of a story?
Well, I think that the first thing to do is divest yourself of the idea that you're going to have any sort of truth. I think that it's admirable to strive for that, but I'm completely prepared for the idea that I'm not going to go to my grave knowing an objective answer about any of this stuff. That's the first thing. The other thing is to point out to people that we talk about anecdotes as being useless in terms of proving something, which, to a certain degree, to another person they are. But if you look at the number of mental conditions that are in the DSM, a lot of those are based on anecdotal evidence. We might see some strange activity in your brain, but you're the one that's telling us that, every 30 minutes you think you're a squirrel or whatever. These are things that are based on anecdotal evidence because for that person in their mind, it's a reality. Now, it's a little bit subjectivist, but if you have multiple people having the similar experience, and in light of the fact that science sometimes does recognize anecdotes, then, you have to give that a little bit more credence. I think that also we're sort of looking for the wrong type of evidence in some ways. We don't, borrowing a phrase from Gordon White again, but you don't measure tides in a sink, and you don't measure an NFL athlete and NFL quarterback's competency in a lab on a treadmill. You just don't. You have to do that in the field. Imagine you're doing something in the field that's completely omnipotent, like the example that we talked about earlier. Then you have no hope of ever finding any proof of this, except for those anecdotes, which is why I get really upset when you'll have someone talk to. This goes both ways, but I'm going to continue picking on cryptozoology, I guess. When you have somebody talking to a cryptozoologist and you say, Bigfoot walked across the road at 11:30 on Saturday night, and they're like, oh my gosh, and they're taking notes, and they're so interested, they believe in it, and you're like, and then it took 2 steps farther off the road and transformed into a wolf. And the cryptozoologist completely loses interest. But you do realize that we're all in glass houses here, and that sounds no more crazy to the average person than you saying that you saw Bigfoot walking across the road. It's intellectually dishonest to cherry pick the cases that really correspond to your particular worldview. And again, it comes back to that thing of taking a look at stuff that you disagree with more, I guess.
Well, I like how Science Bob in the YouTube chat put it. He goes, anecdotes don't leave humongous footprints. Right. And that's, I've made this point a couple of times that, every other Fortean discipline, really does have Bigfoot envy, right? I mean, you look at the trace evidence of Bigfoot versus UFOs or ghosts or anything, and there's just this plethora of physical evidence that you don't have with a lot of these other cases, and it's even if you did have as much evidence in these other cases, it's a lot harder to dismiss the Bigfoot evidence that you do see. I mean, you see alleged hair, even though it's never been confirmed, alleged scat, alleged blood, and those footprints. I mean, the footprints are just the best evidence that we have for the existence of these things. And with all the work that's gone into looking at dermal ridges, the research that's gone into looking at famous tracks like the Bossberg tracks, the Cripplefoot tracks that are really are deformed in specific ways, taking a look at mid-tarsal breaks, all the things that Jeffrey Meldrum's looked at, these conform very specifically to primate anatomy, which is awesome. I think that really does suggest that there's a reality to it. Now, this is where me and a lot of the flesh and blood people will part ways, is they'll say, well, if it's got to be physical because it's leaving footprints and it's leaving scat and it's leaving hair and it's leaving blood, blah, 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 blah. It's got to be physical. Well, that kind of shows an ignorance of parapsychology, because there are physical manifestations from all sorts of different phenomena. And again, I'm not saying that's what this is. Bigfoot could be flesh and blood. But at the same time, using the idea that it leaves behind physical evidence just falls apart when you look at all sorts of other unexplained phenomena. Ghosts open doors, write on walls, leave footprints, leave handprints. None of this is unprecedented. If we go back to the psi phenomena that we were talking about earlier, that's literally the intangible, the imaginal, something inside your head leaving a physical effect on reality, on the real world. So the idea that
I think that's another problem that we have as researchers also as well, is that we have this false dichotomy of physical and non-physical set up. But you look like something, ask anybody, before we discovered the origins of a bunch of diseases, it seemed like this magical non-physical thing that would, affect people. We might be looking at something just like that. We have this, we're really hung up on this dichotomy of physical and non-physical, not realizing that the imaginal and the imaginary are not the same thing. Something can be imaginal and not be imaginary. It can have this non-corporeal quality, but still be just as real as this desk that I'm sitting at.
Joshua Cutchin is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Question coming in from JM here. Are you a believer that Bigfoot does exist?
So I'm going to sound like a politician here. The short answer is yes, but I'm not convinced that it's what everybody thinks it is. But yes, I think that there's the phenomena that causes people to report Bigfoot is very real. And no, I'm not talking, I think there's something that's non-human. There is a non-human intelligence that causes people to have Bigfoot reports. I think that there is a non-human intelligence that causes people to have UFO reports. And I think that there's a non-human intelligence that causes people to have stuff like fairy reports, or, the Loch Ness Monster. If you look at that, it's easy to look at the Loch Ness Monster through the fairy tradition, but if you look at all these sort of different things, they really do have this ability to leave just enough physical evidence that we can't prove it. One of my favorite UFO cases, which I need to memorize the darn name of because I keep on forgetting it, but it's a relatively famous case, and if you Google this phrase, you'll probably find it. But there was this gentleman who I believe was stopped in traffic. And it, like in terms of like the traffic around him stopped and everyone froze, and he had this vision of this alien that came down to him and talked to him, and they had this extended conversation. And he said, "Well, what do you want from us?" And the being said, "We want you to believe in us, but not too much." And that's something that I keep on coming back to with a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I've personally had enough ghost experiences that I can't put that toothpaste back in the bottle, and I have some stuff that kind of flirts with Bigfoot experiences. But again, I'm just skeptical enough to not be able to proclaim them as Bigfoot experiences in my cases. But because it wasn't unambiguous, it wasn't like I actually saw something. But I had some things that happened that definitely gave me pause as well. For the most part, I think I'm a paranormal kryptonite, but it's neither here nor there.
Tell us a story from your book that really intrigues you, one that just kind of makes you feel a little baffled.
Well, so this is a bit of a longer one, but I'm going to try to summarize it as best I can.
We got about 7 minutes.
In this next book.
We got about 7 minutes.
Okay. I think I can do this.
All right.
We're not. So this is actually appearing in the next book. It's a case study from a researcher by the name of Ron Johnson, who just had so much odd stuff happening to him, not only surrounding his case, but also in his life. He has things that you would definitely qualify as alien abductions, but he had a very close friend who was about to pass away from ALS. And he said that, he made sort of one of these pacts that I think we've all made with dead ones or passing away, friends and relatives, saying, once I die, I'm going to find out this and somehow get back to you or tell you what is going on. And this friend of his, who was a research associate of his into Bigfoot, said that when I die, I'm going to find out what is behind Sasquatch. And about 2 weeks after that particular interview, his friend died. And it was about 3 months after the funeral. He had another dream featuring this friend that had passed away, and said, Ron, I know all about Bigfoot. When you'll die, you'll know the secret too, but be careful. Something out of this world is going to happen to you. It's crazy. You're not going to believe it. You need to be prepared for that to happen in your life. And again, this was in a dream, which you'll find out, with a lot of this, there's plenty of stories in the book where the people are unsure whether it was a dream or not. But again, that gets into that false dichotomy that we live with. I personally am of the idea that there are these big important dreams and these smaller dreams, but this seemed to be one of those big important dreams because he had several nights after that dream where he said something weird's going to happen to you, Ron had this experience while watching TV, and he's completely honest with me. There's some stuff that he said he knows is a dream. There's some stuff he says that he's, in this case, not sure. And there was this ball of light that appeared in the living room and turned into a pillar of light, and this Bigfoot walked out to him into the living room and said, your friend, I've been talking to your friend, Daryl, and he wanted me to come and see you. Do you want to come meet my family? And he says yes, and he's transported through this portal into this cave environment with some other Sasquatch, and he has this this brief interaction where it's speaking English, but before he left, this Bigfoot, again, maybe it was a dream, maybe not, said the same thing to him, which was something really wild's going to happen in your life. And several months later, this was in 2012, there had been a Bigfoot sighting near a local coal mine. He lives in the Utah area, an area of Utah rather. Mm-hmm. And he, on this day, he wanted to go and he wanted to go and see this. He always brings his camera. He didn't bring his camera that day. Several days in the bush, he doesn't see a single thing. But his cousin says, "Hey, I want to go, see Bigfoot. Can we go do that?" And of course, again, he didn't have anything on his person this time again because he wasn't planning on that. But his cousin's like, "Let's go to where you supposedly thought where that Bigfoot was." And sure enough, he sees this has this very clear sighting of a Bigfoot that suddenly sort of ended up disappearing into the trees, and they really couldn't figure out exactly how it had disappeared. It was just for a split second that he didn't see it. But this was one of the most profound sightings. I can't recall off the top of my head if he's had any sightings since, but I believe that this was his first sighting, which would definitely qualify for that wild, wonderful event that he experienced. So there are a lot of people who will hear a story like that and poke a bunch of different holes in it. I'm not saying it's bulletproof, but I talked to this guy at length, and he was very moved by it, and it's definitely got a lot of really odd quirks to it here and there. And that's a very much condensed version. There's some other weirdness that happens around it, but we not too many rabbit warrens we could follow right now. But I was it's one of the odder stories that I go to at length in one of the books.
Yeah, that's an intriguing story because it has a little bit of everything. That would mean that Bigfoot is telepathic, it's paranormal, it's ghostly, it's a little bit of everything.
So yeah, it can teleport. It has some sort of link with the dead, and I don't know. I can say that the guy was earnest, and that's about as much as I can do, and that we have some mutual friends who also believe that he's very earnest and think highly of him. But it's an odd one, and there are plenty of stories. It also has some stuff that you see in less fantastic stories, just little bits and pieces of, like we had talked off the air about Bigfoot and sleep paralysis, where there's kind of that sleep paralysis quality to this as well. So, I'm not saying that every story that we cover is 100% true, but there are so many of them that have a lot of these weird elements that they don't really necessarily even have to be true. I believe you saw something that looked like cloaking along those lines, right?
Yeah, when I had my Bigfoot experience, my friend and I were within 100 feet of two of them. And then a few days later, they always had a bunch of paranormal stuff happening around their yard. And we actually used to take what we called perimeter walks around their property. And they had this one ghost. It was really cool because, you'd look out the window and you would see what looked to be, how, how do I explain? Like a night watchman would carry like a candle on like a candle lantern and kind of swing it.
Yeah.
And every now and again you would see this candle lantern being swung, in their property. So we'd go out looking for that, as we got about a minute here to go. And about 5 days after we had the Bigfoot event in their forest behind the property, we were walking around and trying to see what was going on. And we walked along the side of the house. I kind of turned and looked and saw this pixelation by the cherry tree. And the pixelation went from the ground to about 8-10 feet up on the left side of the tree. And there were 4 of us in that group. Only 2 of us could see it. And the other 2 got frustrated, and they said, come on, let's continue walking. And we walked to the front of the house, and that's like, this is within 10, 20 seconds, and we got roared at. Almost like, yeah, I was there.
Yep.
And if you've never heard a Sasquatch roar, it is scary. It is completely scary. It will send you wanting to go inside. We ran inside. We ran inside pretty damn quick. Josh, I'm going to get you to hold on because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Author Joshua Cutchin. JoshuaCutchin.com is his website. We're going to continue on. Oh, we'll see where we're going to go during the break. If we continue with Bigfoot, monsters, or maybe we go UFOs, ghosts. Who knows? There's no script tonight. We'll be back right after this on Spaced Out Radio. There we go. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your take on what Bigfoot is?
Coming from the lower mainland of British Columbia, I don't want to say that I believe it's interdimensional. I'm going to say there is something supernatural with this creature we cannot explain.
Yeah, I think that's not. I think it's completely fair to say that. I mean, I also have problems with terms like interdimensional anyway, just because, okay, that's great. Now what the hell does that mean, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what? In my area where I grew up about an hour west of where the term Sasquatch came from. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's all we've ever known is there's this big hairy wild man coming into the forest. Hey, we're at 70 people now watching on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Oh, dang.
Thanks for hanging on out with all of us, and hope you're enjoying the show. Give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. But, you know, in growing up in that area, I never saw anything. You know, you just kind of believed because that's what the First Nations told you. Right?
Right.
Like I had, when I was working at a different business, I had a First Nations client whose brother had a cabin up on a mountain. And almost once to twice a week during the summer, his brother would be carried out of his house and to hang out because he didn't have a lock on the cabin door. He'd be carried out of his house and he'd wake up at his fire pit with the fire going, and there's a family of Bigfoot sitting around him.
Dang.
Right? And a family of 5, 3 children and the 2 adults.
Although how many times does that have to happen before you just buy a damn lock?
Yeah, but it didn't bother him because they knew.
Right.
They knew he was there to be peaceful, to be respectful of the land, so they didn't bother him. Right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can tell you a place where I would take my family out ATVing and geocaching, and then all of a sudden you read a story online that shows that back in 2006, 2 fishermen got chased by a Sasquatch. Well, this is actually an interesting story. This lake is called Davis Lake. And 2 fishermen got chased out of that lake by a Sasquatch in 2006. And we were out geocaching up there one day, and my daughter looks over to the left side of the lake. So we're at the south side of the lake. So we're facing north, and probably 200 yards away from us, she watches this boy in swim trunks jump into the lake. There are no vehicles at this lake. You have to 4x4 in. Like, we had to ATV into this lake, okay? You either have to 4x4 or ATV in. All right.
Oh, man.
There are there's one road in, one road out. All right. There was no splash. Okay.
Yeah. You hear these things.
And he never came up. And so my daughter was like, Dad, there was just somebody who jumped into the water off that big rock over there, and they haven't come up. And there was no splash. And I'm like, oh, where? And we're looking all around this, and she is just, she's I think she was like 14 at the time, and she was just like, I'm scared. Can we go? So piled them back on the ATV and out we rode. But on that same trail that we had to ride out, one of my friends, actually, we were riding in a pack one day, and one of my friends was sitting on the back of her ATV. Her father was driving it, and she was watching through the trees, a Sasquatch following them through the trees. I was about 120 feet ahead of them. And they, trail, you go nice and slow because it literally, you can only fit about a quad and a half on this trail. So in case there's somebody coming in, you don't want to be going too fast, right? And she's watching through the trees for about 100 yards, this Sasquatch keeping up with them on the quad, about 40, 50 feet into the trees.
And see, some people will say that, these are unrelated, but like it's a topic that Tim talks about in I believe the second chapter. Is he had his entire chapter dedicated to something that's one of my favorite phrases about this, is that you've got to look at the company that these things keep.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Let's say that it is an unrelated ghost child that that jumps into the water. Well, that's still really weird that in most places you go, you don't have a Bigfoot or a ghost child, but here you have a Bigfoot and a ghost child. That to me implies some sort of connection there, even if it's not causal, or even a full-blown correlation. It implies some sort of connection there.
Absolutely. And give me 2 seconds here, because we only got about 30 seconds left before we go back on the air. Hey, sure. I want to give a big shout out to FAP in YouTube for donating $5 in the super chat. Thank you, FAP, so much for doing that for us. We greatly appreciate it. We want to say thank you to the 69, 70 people who are tuning on into Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, if you want to support this show, please give us a thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate that, along with heading to our website, spacedoutradio.com/shop. You can pick yourself up a great t-shirt. That's a great way to support us as well. So what do you say we continue with Josh tonight on the radio, because that's kind of what we do. Hold on. Music is on. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time. Want to remind all of you that if you're looking for our archives, we have them free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and rocking out to Bumblefoot. Get your horns up for that. All right, Joshua Cutchin is here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. And where are we going to go now, Josh? Where are we going to go? Where do you want to go? I'm going to leave it to you. I know I'm the host. I'm the guy who's supposed to be prepared for this, but we're having a lot of fun tonight and just kind of hanging on out. What do you think?
Well, I tell you what, we'll talk about my some of my squatchiness. It's not nearly as harrowing as your stories, but it's still pretty interesting for me. So my wife and I postponed our honeymoon until several years later when we went to Ireland. But when we first got married, we drove up to the mountains of North Georgia, and it was up this cabin, and it was up probably a 200-foot driveway that I would say, in addition to being 200 feet long, is probably, I'd be lying if I said 45-degree angle, because I realize what that looks like, but it was pretty darn steep and it was pretty darn long. Yes, it was technically in a neighborhood, but none of the houses were that accessible. They were on down the road, so whatever. So we actually were talking about Bigfoot the entire time because we're up here in the North Georgia mountains and it's kind of a Bigfoot hotspot. Shout out to anybody who is in that part of the country, North Georgia, just up the road from me. There is a great museum run by David Becara called Expedition Bigfoot that has a bunch of casts, and it's very, very well and respectably done. Respectably done, I should have said. But anyway, so we're talking about Bigfoot this whole time. And the last night, we're in the hot tub on the back porch, and it's this porch that's overlooking this giant valley, mountains in the distance. And I'm just being silly because actually at this point I hadn't even written any of my books yet. And I was doing Bigfoot whoops just to mess around, right? And we get out the next day and we're packing up the car. And as soon as I got to the car, well, she gets out of the car. Sarah goes, Josh, did you do this? I'm like, no, did I do what? And I go to my car, which has not moved, in 24 hours, right? Because I believe we ate in that last night. And right sitting behind my car is this stone, which is, kind of basically I would not hesitate to say a small boulder. It's about the size of, a basketball if you flatten it out a little bit. And it was just sitting right behind my driver's side tire, if memory serves correctly. There was no real hill that it could have fallen from. Even if it could have fallen from the nearest hill, it would have been covered in red Georgia dirt. This was a completely clean boulder that was sitting, behind the tire of my car. If you wanted to prank me as a person because you heard me being an idiot doing my Bigfoot whoops, that's a very subtle prank to pull, I think. I think that you'd want to be a little bit more elaborate. It's a rock that to carry it up that steep driveway that far is a lot of effort for a very, very underwhelming prank. So I kind of wonder if that might have not been something at least Bigfoot-like. Again, I said these were not dramatic people. So the other thing that happened was we went out to Site 7, which is a place that Tim talks about on his Strange Familiars show quite frequently. And he was generous enough to take me out to one of these research sites of his when I hung out with him last April. He sees mystery lights there. He and some other people have seen large shapes. He just saw a bunch of mystery lights there recently. Of course, when I went, A, it was April, so the leaves were coming back on the trees, and B, again, I'm paranormal kryptonite, I guess, for the most part, unless it's some sort of ghost phenomena. Anyway. So I did not see anything I could definitively tell you were, anomalous lights in these woods. Nor did I see anything that I could tell you was a large figure of any type. But I will say that when we first got there, we got out of the car, and within the first 2 seconds, maybe, it was something that really huffed really loudly. Again, can't tell you it wasn't a whitetail because they huff too, but it sounded like a very breathy huff. And something that walked away. Again, I can't tell you it was definitively on 2 feet, but dang if it didn't sound like it was on 2 feet. And then that was the height of of everything that happened. But it was kind of compelling. It was a very, very affecting thing to do there, and to get there rather, and have something like that kind of happen. Of course, it set the wrong tenor for the rest of the evening because nothing else really did happen. But it was really, really interesting. I'll say that, and it put a good shiver on my spine.
Have you ever talked to Mike Johnson, who's a Bigfoot researcher out of Colorado?
Mike Johnson. I feel like I have at some point, but don't hold me to that.
Oh, you have to. You have to get a hold of him. Okay. He has some incredible stories where he won't say where. He has 3 different areas that he investigates Sasquatch, and they're always there. And they have a couple of tests that they do. And for instance, if you're a rookie, so let's say you or me were to go along on one of his Sasquatch adventures, and he would put you at the back of the tent, And almost everybody who has taken that site at the back of the tent, including his own children, he put through this, their head, their head will be touched on the other side of the canvas by a Sasquatch.
See, now I find that really interesting for a couple of different reasons, because and I'm not saying this is what's happening. I find this interesting as a thought experiment. It's actually sort of the topic of the first chapter in my new book, which sounds like I'm a shill, but that's all I've been thinking about is this book. I kind of wonder if you look at the way that certain poltergeist phenomena behave around a focal point.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if it isn't some sort of phenomena that's attached to him, unless it happens when he's not there. But if it always happens when he's there, not saying that it's not a real thing, but I wonder, like, what are we looking at there? Are we sure that's a Bigfoot, or is that some sort of poltergeist kind of phenomena, or like a poltergeisty Bigfoot kind of thing? I don't know. That's fascinating, though. That is really, really that's wild.
To continue on, sorry,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Sorry. When him and his buddy, he had one of his buddies up with him that he researches with. And the previous week, his buddy had lost his favorite hat. Just fell off or forgot it at the campsite or wherever. So normally what Mike does is he does this tour around to see if there's anybody camping around his Sasquatch site. Okay, because it's out in the wilderness. And so him and his buddy go down this road, and here they are, driving down. There's nothing, because you have to take those roads quite slowly. And they're going to see something anomalous and red on the road, right? He believes that the Sasquatch in that area actually recognized the sound of his vehicle, to the point where when they drove past this road that took them to their camping site, they instead of turning off to the camping site, they went straight to check to see if there was any campers around. All right. When they came back and were just about to turn, the red hat was sitting right in the middle of the road. Couldn't miss it.
That's wild. Whatever these things are, they kind of have a playful quality that I think can be like among the most playful of all these different phenomena. Like sometimes they just seem like straight up games.
Oh yeah. And they've had some rookies in there who are like, oh, let's get the trail cam shot. And they have covered the trail cam in mud, outside of the lens, in mud and trees and in different scent removing areas. And they've literally come back an hour later, and that camera is laying right at the back of the vehicle with all the sticks and mud all around it.
Yeah, that's this preternatural ability to just know where these things are. Somebody suggested something to me, which I would love to see people try. And I think I had heard that someone had tried it, but it was one of those people that make a bunch of claims about their property for years and years, and they're really secretive. And that same thing that plays out all the time in these fields, right? But this person said that they were actually able to get some pretty good film, or I can't recall if it was stills or if it was video footage. But either way, they said that they filmed a mirror facing behind. So they filmed facing a mirror, and they were able to catch activity behind the trail cam, which, I'm not sure if it's if there's any truth to that, but it's a really interesting sort of out of the box way of approaching this that I think we need more of.
Definitely. And we don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know if we're dealing with something playful or very violent. I mean, I would like to find out. I mean, I think about it, and I say this very facetiously, but man, that would be a great death. It really would. How did he die? Death by Sasquatch in the forest. But we really don't know. I mean, I can tell you, they sure put out an aura of fear. Like when Merle, myself, and Mark were triangulated a couple of years ago to get out of the area we were in. Okay, that was eerie. It did not feel comfortable. We couldn't see them. We were hearing things in different areas, and it wasn't until we put it all together that we kind of figured, well, maybe we were being triangulated in on. And that's, one of the conclusions that we have now is that's what happened, right? And I trust.
Yeah, no, and that's that's super consistent with a lot of other stories. I mean, absolutely.
And I take Mark. I lean on Mark, my buddy Mark, quite a bit when I'm out in the forest, because Mark he's been an outdoorsman for 30 years. He's been a hunting guide. He's been an animal tracker, and he's done a lot of things in the woods. And when he can't explain something, I know we got something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know, and that's kind of sometimes it's if you can find your way to this place, that's kind of a reassuring feeling, is to know that we still don't know about we still don't know what these things are, and there are theories that have strengths and weaknesses that the other theories don't, and but yeah, that insurmountable fear. I mean, how much stock do you put into, not to turn the tables on you completely, but how much stock do you put into infrasound being this catch-all explanation?
Oh, I don't even know where to start with it. I don't even know where to start. I really don't. Could be.
Okay. Yeah, and that's where I fall too. But I feel like it's been taken on as this gospel truth, and I just don't see the evidence quite for that in the absence of being able to take a look at Bigfoot's vocal cords.
Yeah, I really don't know. I am curious to see if they are telepathic in any way, because Mark and I had a strange occurrence right near our Bigfoot gifting site that we have, and I just kind of put it out there. I'm like, okay, my eyes, when if you spend a lot of time in the forest, your eyes just kind of wander and they will glare onto one area and you expect something to move. And I just kind of put it out in my head. I said, I know you're there. Give me a sign that you're there. And within 10 seconds of that, nature's security alarm, which are chipmunks, started peeping off right in that area where I was looking, which was about 60 yards away. And my big thing with that is, I don't know. Okay, I'm not saying it was a Sasquatch. All right. The woo side of me, the tinfoil side of me says, oh, hell yes. Oh, absolutely. Of course that's what it was, because that's what we were out there for. But something moved in order to make that chipmunk in that, or that squirrel, whatever it was, in that area where I was looking, that I had sent that message to, had made that chipmunk sound off. Something did. And like with Mark was like laughing, and he's like, well, you got your answer, right? You got your answer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows? Who knows?
And I would argue, if nothing else, you got an answer for you. Like, that's something else that I think is criminally overlooked, is how personal a lot of these things seem to be, and how they don't have to mean everything to everybody. They can mean something to one person. That might be all that they're trying to accomplish.
Could be. But I could tell you on that one day trip, because in the forest here, Josh, you got to go in armed. You have no choice. And you're very silly in our area with grizzly bears, black bears, very large, trophy type cougars, moose.
Yeah, bear spray alone ain't gonna cut it.
No, especially if one of the elusive grizzly bears comes around. And so, thank goodness I can run faster than Mark, and I can't run very fast. So I just hope that he doesn't shoot me in the leg, so that way I become the meal instead. But nonetheless, like I said earlier, like, I have two friends who I really go out in the forest with. There's my buddy Mikey, and there's my buddy Mark. And if those two are scared, I know that my unarmed butt should get the hell out of there and look at the signs.
Yeah, they're the canaries in your coal mine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to trust people in the wilderness. You really do, especially if they have a lot more experience than you. Like, there are places in the forest here that I will not go to because it's freaky. It's freaky. There are areas where I won't get out of my vehicle. Not that I'm afraid of people, but you just get that sense that there is something big around here that you don't want to mess with, or a pack of wolves or something along those lines. But nonetheless, let's continue on as we got about 5 minutes here to go before we go to break at the top of the hour. Joshua Cutchin is our guest tonight. I'm going to get you to put your best Mean Gene Okerlund hat on here for a second. Who wins between Bigfoot and Dogman? Who's winning that battle royale?
Oh, Bigfoot, I love you, but it's got to be Dogman, right?
How do you figure? How do you figure?
Well, these Dogman stories. Okay, so like there are some Bigfoot stories that are really harrowing, and there are some Bigfoot stories that are that seem to be really gentle. But these Dogman stories are just consistently horrifying. So that's sort of where I come from with that, is that, like, you talk to a lot of these people and they seem to really have this horrible, negative, oppressive quality to them that you'd get in some Bigfoot cases, but not all Bigfoot cases. And the Dogman ones, I don't think I've ever heard one that has left somebody with, I'm really just simply curious now or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, they seem a little bit more consistently nasty, I guess.
What do you think of all these telepathic messages that people have reported on? The telepathy thing just kind of weirds me out. Okay, because you get a lot of these people who say that they've raised a rifle to a dogman or a gun to a dogman, and they almost get this message in their head that says it's going to be really bad for you if you pull the trigger. Don't pull the trigger. Just go away.
That's another one of those things that you hear about, and this is where I have to sort of do a gut check for my own biases, right? So I'm a big fan of saying, like, well, we can untether Bigfoot from the flesh and blood hypothesis that it's an ape, because we live in an uncertain world where psi phenomena and stuff like that exist. So it doesn't have to be a flesh and blood Bigfoot, okay? And then I say, we can untether the UFO thing from extraterrestrials, and we can do that because because there's such a thing as telepathy, and that means that everything's back on the table. But at the same time, if human beings can harness telepathic communication, which again, all this psi research tends to suggest that is the case, then, well, flesh and blood aliens could, and a flesh and blood primate of substantial logic could, and who knows? I mean, maybe the thing with the Dogman is maybe Dogman has that sort of ability as well. I do think that the case is there's a much stronger case that something like Dogman is not a biological creature, because there's just no real precedent for it. Well, there's no strong precedent for it in the fossil record that we see. So it's a little bit more upsetting in general because of that fact too, I think. I mean, you can sort of rationalize that Bigfoot is indeed just a big monkey, but when you look at something like Dogman, it's a little bit scarier. As far as the mind speak thing with Bigfoot, man, you hear that a lot.
Yes.
And you hear that from people who would never admit it in public.
Yes.
And it's weird. And I think that sometimes it is people, getting in their own heads. But sometimes I think that there's something really legitimate to it. And some of the things that you hear, I mean, there are some very prominent people who've referenced it as well. Les Stroud famously referenced it, and of course, as soon as he did that, everybody who was interested in his interest in Bigfoot rolled their eyes and threw up their hands. But it's not an uncommon thing, and you can even, if telepathy is not just like hearing messages, but also the ability to impart emotions, then that would also explain a lot of these other, these feelings of dread and whatnot as well. And what an adaptation that would be. I mean, holy hell.
Well, I mean, the question is how far how far do we go down the road with this? Because we can let imagination try and take this all over the place. We really can. Or we can, try and look at it with some sort of logic. And that's really the problem that we're having right now, is we don't know what the logic is behind this creature. Is it possible to even figure that out, as we got about 30 seconds to go before we go to break?
Yeah, that's a great question. Is it possible, being a human being, looking at this from a human perspective and being trapped in these language bubbles, that I don't know if we ever can. Absolutely, I don't know if we can or not.
That is the big danger. That is the big danger that we got to figure out. All right. I think we've, and by the way, I'm on team Bigfoot for this one. I think he comes up from the top rope, a la Macho Man Randy Savage, elbow to the solar plexus, flips him over for a good old Iron Sheik camel clutch for the tap out. That's the way I think it's going on down. But that's just me. I could be wrong. Joshua Cutchin, we got him for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. JoshuaCutchin.com is his website. Check out his books. And we got hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio coming up next. That's a good hour of woo there, man. Good Bigfoot stuff there. Good.
Yeah, I'm not making any friends amongst Bigfooters tonight, but it's what it is.
You know
I'm just trying.
A lot of Bigfooters need a good shaking. Let's just be honest.
Well, I'm just trying to speak. Well, I'm trying to do a couple things. So I'm trying to be an advocate for the people who have gotten literally laughed at by some of these really dogmatic people, and I'm trying to present alternative ideas while not being dogmatic myself, which is sometimes a razor's edge, because you can become dogmatic in your non-dogmaticism.
Hey, I'm just going to run my dogs outside. I'll be right back. You can share some Bigfoot stories with our YouTube crowd if you want, or if you want to take a bathroom break, do what you want. That's what we do.
I might bathroom break again because I've been overhydrating here.
All right, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
All right, I'm back. How we all doing, YouTube? Enjoying tonight's show? Thank you so much for tuning us on in. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to do that. What a great show. And
All right, I am back.
Quick thanks to Science Bob for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that, Science Bob. Thank you so much. That was really cool of you to do. You didn't have to do that. Appreciate it. All right. And yeah. You having fun yet?
Yet? Yes, it's been fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are we going to go with this? Where do you want to go? Let's let the YouTubers choose.
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel like we've done a really good job of spinning gold out of straw here, but I think we might need some help now.
Sometimes those are the most fun shows, though, man. When you go in unscripted and you just kind of run with it. Okay,
absolutely.
YouTube, you choose the topic. Be serious here. No stupid stuff. You choose the topic that Josh and I are going to talk about next. It's all about you. All about you. What do you guys want to do? What do you guys want to do? Hi, Lee A. Or
throw us a bone.
All right. They want more woo. Shanna wants more woo. She needs a woo fix. She injects woo like it's coffee in the morning. Lizard people. Do you want to go down the lizard road?
Oh, geez, I don't know. That's really outside of my wheelhouse, but I can maybe improvise, spit some fire. We'll see.
We got 90 seconds. More crypto. How about we go down the fairy realm?
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
No, please, it's perfect. That's if you want to, that's great.
Yeah, let's go down the fairy realm. Fairy realm. That's what we're doing. Little people, fairy realm, gargoyles, gnomes. Let's do it.
All my fun things. I love those are all right in my wheelhouse. So, yeah.
All right. Perfect. That's where we're going. Fairy realm.
Yep.
Is Dr. Greer a reptilian? He could be. Space alliances.
Oh, man.
Space alliances. We'll hit that one. Actually, space alliances on April 30th. Olaf Phillips will be here. We're talking Solar Warden, the secret space program. We'll get into space alliances about that. Persevere. You remind me about that. Audra is wondering if you would play your tuba while we talk about fairies.
Oh man, here's my confession: is that I have not played much in the last week, and I'm weak as hell. So normally I would, but I don't want to embarrass myself. So
all right.
But there's plenty of me on YouTube, so.
All right, let's just quickly remind everybody, thank you to FAP and Science Bob for donating on the Super Chat tonight. You can do so as well, or head to our store, spacedoutradio.com/shop. Grab yourself a t-shirt or some swag there. It's a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis. Let's get to hour 3, shall we?
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show
And
info.
here we go.
Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour is underway tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates, along with our digital side on Revolution Radio. And, of course, don't forget, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Axismus. Axismus is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and, of course, we rock out to Bubblefoot each and every night. There's so much more there as well. Go peruse. Go peruse. For the final time tonight, we introduce Joshua Cutchin. He is a paranormal author. He's got books out about UFOs, Faeries, Bigfoot coming up this spring. He's a man of many talents, many hats in this field, and we're going to go into the fairy realm right now. Joshua, welcome back.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's passed by very quickly.
Yeah, it has. Now, my friend, we're getting into springtime where the fairies come out to play. Little lights dancing in the forests, and this is in areas where we have no lightning bugs or anything like that. Gnomes start to come out, the wood nymphs, the gargoyles, the little trolls under the bridges saying you cannot cross here unless you know the password. What's the password for tonight? How real are these, or are these just folklore?
Well, I think that if you take it on face value, it's hard to say that they are real in terms of the way that they've been codified and sort of described. I think that if you look at these fairy taxonomies, and they're quite elaborate and quite varied, and you have, the Huldra folk and the elves and the dwarves and the leprechauns and the cluricons and the sylvestras and all these sorts of different things that fall under this fairy umbrella, even stuff like ogres and mermaids and whatnot. And it's hard for me to say that I can get behind that sort of strict elaborate taxonomy. It just seems a little too Pokemon-esque for me. But I think that what they were describing and a lot of the traditions surrounding them and a lot of the aspects of them I think they're absolutely 100% real. I just think that they shift and take on different contexts with different times. I've sort of alluded to earlier in the show about how I'm quite convinced that the alien contact phenomena and the fairy abduction phenomena are pretty darn close to being the same thing. I leave room for lights in the sky to be a little bit different, because I think a lot of those are unidentified craft, and I think some of those might be psi phenomena, some of those might be misunderstood weather phenomena, some of those might be extraterrestrials, and some of those might be sort of like variations on fairy lights and stuff. But I think that the contact experience and the fairy contact experience are, almost absolutely right on being the same thing. And the reason that I say that is in my opinion, at least, manifold. If you look at the similarities between these two phenomena, I mean, there's some obvious things that all the way back to Valais were pointed out, like obviously the stature of the little people. They're little, and a lot of these grays have little small bodies. But it does go deeper than that. Not only are they little, but they're often supervised by a taller figure. In the modern day, that's a tall gray supervising these shorter worker grays. Back if you look at the Celtic lore, it was the Queen of the Fairies who was always human-sized, supervising these other fairies. Again, those elaborate taxonomies play into this too. People will tell you that there are multiple species of very different aliens visiting Earth, just like there were multiple races of different types of fairies living on the Earth. I already mentioned the lights in the sky. Wands, fairies had wands. Aliens have wands too. Quick thing to clear up too. When we talk about fairies, we're not talking about the things with wings that live in the bottom of the garden. That's pretty much a late 16th century affectation from children's books. That doesn't really have anything to do with the tradition. Fairies could levitate. Again, another thing that you see in a lot of alien abduction lore, but they just generally did not have wings. They could levitate and could levitate other people, but that wasn't the case. You have examples of, people sleeping through their spouses being abducted by fairies, which is the same thing that you see in alien abductions. You had fairy rings once upon a time. Now we have crop circles. Both live underground. Alien bases and fairyland are both underground, right? That's what we're told, at least in each case. You have livestock mutilation, which was almost exclusively blamed on fairies in the British Isles, to the extent that, they would say that, it wasn't if it was a fairy slaughter, and even if there wasn't anything taken off of the cow itself that was dead, well, that was because the fairies took the essence of the cow. You have missing time. It's a big famous one from both traditions. You would go into fairyland and you thought it would be 3 days, and it was actually 30 years, or you'd think it was 30 years and it would be 30 minutes. Similarly, missing time is a very common aspect of the UFO phenomena, and hybridization, the same motivations that you hear for alien abductions, aliens wanting to hybridize with humans, are the exact same things that you hear from these old fairy stories. Our race is dying. We need new blood. We need human affection. You'll find similarities between the way these things supposedly eat. Fairies would absorb food, or the essence of food, rather, known as the foison usually, through their skin. Well, there are plenty of stories of liquid being rubbed on the skin of gray aliens to help them absorb their nutrients. And then finally, the thing that really baffled me, that was the thing this is the one linchpin, the keystone that really kept me from saying that these are the same thing. But when I saw this, I was like, okay, I'm done. They're pretty much the same thing. Is the fact that you have what sound almost exactly like alien implants in fairy lore. We get the terms blustery, blister, and blast all from the same Germanic root. Blustery meaning a blustery, windy day, blast meaning something like getting hit by something, by some sort of unseen force, and blister are all part of the same thing. And that was because there was belief that the fairies could hit you with a gust of wind known as a fairy blast that would leave a blister. And inside this blister, if you'd offended the fairies, would be any number of things: bones, bits of ceramic, hard bits of metal, sometimes teeth, feathers, leaves, all sorts of crazy stuff would supposedly be in their bodies. And this sounds almost exactly like a lot of these alien implants that you see. The thing that really I found compelling was, I believe it was a case in Newfoundland where there was a farmer who had offended the fairies somehow and got hit with a fairy blast. And this particular fairy blast had loads of white string coming out of it. They kept on pulling this white string out of it. And that sounds almost exactly like some descriptions of modern day Morgellons disease, which some people believe are attached to or are associated with alien abductions. So to me, this is too much stuff to say that these things, well, it's definitely too much to say that it's unrelated. And for me personally, it's reached my own personal threshold to say that these are just the same thing. Now, I'm not saying that fairies are aliens, I'm not saying that aliens are fairies, but I think that these two sets of belief are describing the very same, very real set of phenomena that people experience.
So do you think that one is of the same?
I mean, I think that if you were walking down the road in County Limerick in 1750 and you saw a bright light and these tiny creatures took you and they poked and prodded you, and you saw a dead relative, and you would say that they were fairies. And I think if that exact same thing happened to you on the road, on a road in County Limerick today, you'd say that they're aliens. I think that the interpretation is culture dependent, but I think that they're both describing pretty much the same. I mean, I hesitate to say entities. It might just be some sort of disincarnate intelligence, but I think they're describing the same set of things that are happening. I realize that there's a big fault in this because I've been talking about not being, dogmatic this whole time about this, but it's reached my own personal threshold for that. And interestingly enough, so there's an irony into the missing 411 stuff, right? Because I've called it a paranormal Rorschach test, right? So if you're into UFOs, it's UFOs. If you're into Bigfoot, it's Bigfoot. It's behind the missing 411 phenomena. And I realize the irony of me saying that and then saying that I think that fairy lore is one of the few things that really satisfies all the criteria for the missing 411 stuff. But if you look at it objectively, I really do think it does. I have a chapter dedicated in my book, Thieves to the Night, about this, about how a lot of the parameters that you see in David Paulides' missing 401 cases are directly mentioned around fairy abduction. The risk of bright colors, the lack of interest in animals following trails, the inclement weather, the idea that people would be picked up and then put back down in a place that they'd already been investigated. the disappearances around bodies of water and boulder fields, which were traditionally some of the most intensely populated fairy areas. I think that this is all pointing towards some sort of a phrase that Timothy and I like to use, the other, some sort of other that is interacting with us that we sort of struggle to define, and we end up coming up with different traditions, but we're all pointing towards the same thing in a sort of blind men and the elephant sort of way, if you're familiar with that parable.
How do mermaids fit into this?
Well, the short answer is that they are a variation of fairy folk. That's not entirely fair, but that's a pretty good way to generalize it. I think that there's a good case to be made, especially in light of how well humans are adapted to be in and around the water, that there might be a species of aquatic ape. Stellar, who identified several species that turned out to be real, including Stellar sea cow, which is extinct now, I believe. Identified what became known as Stellar's sea ape, I believe, which she described. It sounded like a swimming monkey creature. What's really interesting is that there's actually a section in the book that's coming out where you can draw some really strange. I never thought I'd say this, but some really strange comparisons between certain Sasquatch stories and the mermaid tradition. Tales of people off the coast of the southern coast of Alaska seeing these Bigfoot heads popping up, miles out at sea. Or, John Green actually was a famous Bigfoot researcher who had a couple of different letters sent to him of people who saw Bigfoot swimming underwater. They could actually see the Bigfoot swimming underwater with this sort of weird, frog-like motion with its legs, if I recall correctly. So so there's some weird stuff there with Bigfoot and mermaids. In fact, in some European traditions, wild women, specifically, more than wild men, but some wild men, but wild women were sometimes supplanted into the sea, like they'd be depicted like literally in the ocean. And of course, you have Grendel's mother, who was sort of a water demon, but people think that Grendel might have been some sort of Bigfoot analog, some sort of wild man, some sort of troll. So there's sort of a little bit of a connection there as well.
There is a large indigenous population belief here in British Columbia that is how Sasquatch gets between the Gulf Islands, is by swimming island to island. So that is not very uncommon folklore around the West Coast here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's, if we want to take a look at Bigfoot as being, here we are back on Bigfoot. If we want to take a look at Bigfoot as being an undiscovered ape, apes famously do not have an affinity for water. Not that they don't ever swim if they're forced to, but the idea that an ape would actually an ape besides humans, I guess, would actually take to the water is doesn't really jive with what we know of primate behavior. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but it's interesting. That's something that I personally had no idea. So that's interesting that you've heard that too.
Yeah, it's very well known here on the West Coast that that's one of the legends that has been seen around here. But with the mermaids and mermen, are we still getting reports of them today, or has that gone the way of the old wooden sail ships?
I mean, no, you still hear about it. I do believe that they are less. I do believe that they are less publicized than they once were, because you talk about a real stigma. If I say I saw Bigfoot, it's like, oh, I don't know if you want to say that. And I'm like, well, what if I said I saw a leprechaun? Well, I don't know if I said that. What if I said I saw, a mermaid? Holy cow. So yeah, they are still going on. I believe Lauren Coleman just recently released a pretty good looking book called Merbeings. It's a great, looks like it's got a lot of great content, and it's got one of those lovely Sam Sheeran covers. But you still hear about it. You don't normally. I feel like from what I recall, you tend to hear about them less in the West and more in African countries and like island Southeast Asia, those sort of areas. But yeah, it's it's a real interesting thing because a lot of people write it off, but it's a phenomena that has occurred into, at least the present day. You don't really see it as much today as you did, say, in the 70s and 80s, but that might be a function of whatever this phenomenon is, reacting to how many phones there are everywhere with cameras on them, sort of like we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Is the mermaid, I know on the West Coast here, back in the 1800s, there were alleged sightings throughout the islands and the coastal islands of mermaids right into the Vancouver area when Vancouver was first settled by George Vancouver. And that happened right along the West Coast through Washington State, Oregon to California and so on. Are these reports of these phenomena, are they, when you say they're still happening but maybe not as publicized, are they happening in North America, or are they more happening in areas where people of more tradition are heading out to the ocean to go fishing or looking for shellfish or whatever it may be?
Oh, I mean, from what I know of it, it's much more in areas that have an ingrained tradition, and I think that this speaks a lot to. I think it speaks a lot to how these traditions die off anyway, and I have a suspicion that there is something about belief and ridicule being tied into how easily these things are seen. There was an interesting story from somebody who was talking about fairy lore it was a Manx person talking about fairy lore on the Isle of Man, and how by the mid 20th century, like, you just didn't see the fairies as much anymore because we didn't talk about them anymore. They were, it was silly. It was like, it was just fancy. So as soon as you start making something into being fanciful, you don't see it anymore, which I know is, you wanted your daily dose of woo, here it is. But I think that ties into ideas of archetypes and tulpas and thought forms that, it is sort of like that anecdote, which I don't know if it's true or not, but how certain cultures that were, when they were first approached by the West, didn't have certain words for things that we think are just like one of the first things that you learn, like the color blue. Like, they didn't really differentiate it as blue; they'd call it some sort of shade of green, and things like that. Language is a tricky thing, and it really does help. It really does form the world in which you live. And I wonder if the extent to which it does that doesn't literally sometimes, manifest reality in itself.
We've only got about 3 minutes left with you tonight. And, I'm curious to ask you this before we have to call it the night. Out of mermaids, dogman, Bigfoot, gnomes, gargoyles, whatever it may be, what do you think we're the closest to actually announcing as a discovery? Leave aliens aside. Let's just stick with the cryptid world here for a couple minutes.
Yeah, I would have to say something along the lines of, this is not a very attractive answer to a lot of people, but I would say something along the lines of the thylacine. Which, anybody doesn't know what it is, it's also known as the Tasmanian tiger, which is a Australian marsupial that was hunted to extinction. The last one died in captivity, I believe, in the early 20th century. But if you just do a YouTube search for thylacine videos or Tasmanian tiger videos, some of these are just jaw-droppingly compelling in terms of the if you compare them side to side with the footage of the last known surviving thylacine. Some of them are just absolutely astoundingly clear and seem to really, really suggest that there's something to their existence. And it's not that far-fetched because we know that they existed, and that they existed not too long ago. And, what's more, we have all this great footage, and I believe there's been, like Bigfoot, scat, footprint, hair samples all collected, and I think some of them have come back as, yes, this is definitely from a thylacine, but, in the absence of a specimen, they can't really make a proclamation about that. I think that's a really good one. I would also say that, Orang Pendek, which I mentioned earlier, even though I was discussing it in terms of its folklore about having rear-facing feet, it is one of those cryptids that is in a location that is so dense and has so many good eyewitness eyewitness accounts attached to it, and honestly is less fanciful than something like Bigfoot because it's just a sort of a bigger monkey. And again, has precedent in that part of the world with the Homo floresiensis, the hobbits that they found as fossils. That I think that's all really compelling and all really very much in that favor. As far as all these phenomena in general, if we haven't already proven the existence of psi phenomena, then that's next 100%. And the alien thing, I think it's so far tied up in religion and archetypes and high strangeness and just everything else that I just don't know if I think it's going to, and in addition to it being completely omnipotent by all appearances.
Yes.
I just don't think that's an answer that we'll get to anytime soon.
Hey Josh, we got to do this a little bit sooner than about a year in between shows, man. We have to do
I know, it's been way too long.
It has been way too long. I want to say thanks for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. You're a real pro. You're a guy that we should all follow, and very much looking forward to your Bigfoot book with Timothy Renner. I think when that comes out, we're going to have to book a show with both you and Tim on that, because I think that's going to be a real good one, man. A real good one.
We're gonna do the circuit, and I really it means a lot to hear you say that. I really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, man. Anytime. And Josh's website is joshuacutchin.com. You can find his other 3 books there. Make sure you do that. Coming up next on Spaced Out Radio, we start to take this thing home as we bring you the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. More Spaced Out Radio coming up. Great job, man.
An absolute pleasure. I mean, I like I said, I don't know why we don't do this. I don't know why we don't do this more often. I'm doing a lot fewer podcasts in general in the last year because of the boys. But
yeah,
now it's getting a little bit more palatable to do these sort of late night things. So let's make this happen definitely again. Yeah, definitely. I'll pop on here with Tim. That'll be a fun.
Yeah,
that'll be a fun conversation.
Yeah, you and Tim. Once you guys set up a time where the book is going to be released, hit me up and we'll get you guys booked here as quickly as possible. Right, because we're already booking into like right now. We just finished up booking April. And we're going to be booking into May here probably within the next week or 2. So if you have a little bit clearer picture in a couple weeks, just shoot me a message and just remind me, because I definitely want to save a date for you. But if I can't do it during the week, I can get one of the weekend hosts to do it as well, because it's harder to get guests on the weekends, and we try to do the whole teamwork thing to help each other out, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I will. I'll definitely let you know. I have a lot of. We're having to do our own publicity on this one because we're self-publishing. So I will definitely be making the rounds. That's for damn sure.
Oh, absolutely. We got time for you guys. We definitely have time for you guys. But you take care. I know it's 2:30 in the morning where you are. Thank you for
a little bit late.
Thanks for staying up with us, and you and your family be safe out there. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
All right,
really
brother.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Bye.
Bye. I like him. Good dude. Thank you, Dave. Awesome episode. It was epic. Have a nice dinner and dessert tonight. Be safe and sweet. UFOs and Bigfoot dreams. Bye until your next show. Bye, Renee. Have a good dinner and dessert. Save some dessert for Dave. I would assume because Renee lives not in North America, somewhere else, and it's dinner time. Everybody's looking for the weekend. Hey, Corey, by the way, you should check with John and Michael and just make sure that they're all locked up for guests this coming week. We should do that because tomorrow is Wednesday, so I want to make sure that everything's kind of solidified there. Hi, Shar. See, now you get to hear it verbally, Shar. Shar. Please don't go. Please don't go. Hey, Fitty Barbarino, I want you to know that I'm gonna miss your love the minute you walk out that door. Who's staying? Who's staying? Hi, Maureen. Oh, Renee is staying. Renee is staying. Yes. We got about like 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Let's see what's happening in the chat rooms. I should probably check on that. Which mouse is what? I got like 2 mouse here. How do you pluralize? Are they mice or mouses? How do you pluralize them? Apparently, a member of the Ottawa Senators hockey team is the first NHL player to have it. That's coming down today. Don't know who it is. Let's check TSN. Let's see here. 2 minutes. Panthers to sign quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. Wow. I wonder where Tom Brady is going. And the Masters looks like it's postponed. That sucks. The Masters is way too cool. I love the Masters. Oh, let's see here. An Ottawa Senators player. They haven't announced who. Of course not, because the NHL is terrible at that. I want dinosaurs to patrol the Canadian... Is it Mises? Is it mice? Hey, Slim. How you doing? Hi, Leah. Leah. Oprah hasn't been arrested. That would be all over the regular media. And that has... she has not been arrested for child porn or anything like that. All right. Do you think you got to realize that in certain situations, and I'm not giving you shit, please don't take it that way, but in certain situations, okay, the mainstream media, if a mogul like Oprah Winfrey was arrested or really had her house being searched, it would be the next story next to the COVID story. She is that big. And I'm not saying physically. I'm saying in the world as a person. So, please, I'm not trying to criticize you, but, that's how these weird stories, these fake news sites and these conspiracy websites come out and they put this jargon out there with zero proof or anything like that. And that's how it happens. That's a mainstream story. I think Tom Brady, by the way, is heading to the West Coast. He's a California boy. He's played in Michigan, played in Boston now. He wants to come home. I think he's going to San Fran. That's what I think. That's what I think. Okay, everyone, here we go. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. Absolutely loving the time here tonight with all of you. Want to say a big thanks to Joshua Cutchin for coming on the show tonight. And don't forget his website, joshuacutchin.com. Check out his books as well. I can't wait for that book between him and Timothy Renner on Bigfoot. Absolutely cannot wait. Hey, I want to remind all of you that if you missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rocking Out to Bumblefoot and keeping up to date on Captain Chirk's SOR Newswire. Let's get to it. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show. We'll get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and the downright odd. Tom Brady signing in Tampa Bay. I'm just learning this. I am just learning this. Look, I'm not an NFL fan. I got no stake in the game. I know. I like the Canadian Football League. Go figure. I'm one of about 19 people, and 18 of them live in Saskatchewan, who actually like this Canadian Football League over the NFL. Anyways, this is just odd. I'm blown away by this. I am blown away by this. I knew he was leaving the New England Patriots, but going to Tampa Bay? Oh, I don't get it. What does Tampa Bay have to offer? Besides nice uniforms. They do have nice uniforms. I don't get it. Well, good luck. All right. Moving on as we get to the news here. A unique rock carving found in the Tamara rock art site in central Iran has 6 limbs and has been described as part man, part mantis. Rock carvings or petroglyphs of invertebrate animals are rare, so entomologists teamed up with archaeologists to try and identify the motif. They compared the carving with others around the world with the local six-legged creatures with its prehistoric artists could have encountered. Entomologist Mahmoud Kolnagari of the Islamic Assad University of Iraq in Iran and a bunch of others were looking at this, and they are scratching their heads. The 14-centimeter carving, which was first spotted during surveys between 2017 and 2018, couldn't be identified back then due to its unusual shape. The 6 limbs suggest an insect, while the triangular head with the big eyes and the grasping forearms are unmistakably those of a praying mantis, a predatory insect that hunts and captures prey like flies, bees, and even small birds. An extension on its head even helps narrow the identification to a particular genus of mantids in the region, Empusa. Empusa. That's a fun word to say. Can we make that a password some night? Empusa, clam. Empusa. Anyways, even more mysterious are the little limbs, which end in loops or circles. The closest parallel to this in archaeology is the squatter man, a petroglyph figure found around the world depicting a person flanked by circles, while they could represent a person holding circular objects. An alternative hypothesis is that the circles represent auras caused by atmospheric plasma discharges. It is presently impossible to tell exactly how old the petroglyphs are because sanctions on Iran prohibit the use of radioactive material needed for radiocarbon dating. However, experts like Jan Brouwer and Gus Van Veen, my first girlfriend was a Van Veen. She was dangerous. Examined the Tamara site and estimated the carvings were made between 40,000 and 4,000 years ago. A praying man, let's just say one can only guess why prehistoric people feel the need to carve a mantis man into a rock. Why? Well, I'm going to add my theory to this. It's aliens. It's aliens. We've had enough people claiming to have, these alien-type mantid beings coming in, checking things out, taking you, they never slip you the tongue or anything nice and progressive like that. No. But this thing has aliens written all over it, all right? Why do we always have to argue what it is? It's aliens. Okay? Much like Devil's Tower is a tree stump, not a rock, not a volcanic formation. We're all on Team Stump here. All right? This petroglyph, it's aliens. Definitely aliens. Officials with an Indian railway company say they have started using the recorded sound of buzzing bees to keep elephants from wandering onto the tracks. Well, that's cool. The Northeastern Frontier Railway said its Moradabad division installed honeybee sound systems in locations known to be frequented by elephants. Officials said villagers who spot elephants in the area alert the company, and workers then engage the sound system to play the sound of bees, which elephants are known to avoid for their fear of being stung. The company said the system was adopted in response to an increasing number of elephants killed in collisions with trains. Well, that's actually a very cool idea. Very cool idea. Shirk, why did you put this one in the run? I'm going to read this because if I didn't, Shirk, you're in trouble. You are in such trouble. We're going to call this story silly. All right. I mean, the guy is talented. Did it for a good cause. But it's soccer. I cannot believe that Captain Shirk threw a soccer story in right under my nose. You know how I feel about this, Captain? Shaking my fist at you, and now you can actually see it if you're looking at YouTube. A British soccer freestyler set a world record when he walked, actually it is kind of impressive, he walked 50 miles across a Siberian lake while juggling a soccer ball with his feet, knees, chest, and head. John Farnworth, who previously set a Guinness World Record when he performed keepy uppies. What the hell is a keepy uppie? Across 0.61 miles of the Sahara Desert, spent 48 hours juggling the soccer ball across Lake Baikal, the world's largest frozen lake. Farnworth said in his Facebook post that the accomplishment was the hardest 48-hour period he's ever experienced. He is believed to have broken a Guinness record on the second day of the challenge for the farthest distance covered juggling a football or a soccer ball on ice in 1 hour. Now you can see where the NHL has turned. My goodness, have they ruined the game. Thanks, Gary. Anyways, he traveled a distance of about 3 miles an hour. Farnworth, in his endurance challenge, raised funds for Cancer Research UK, which is always a good cause when you're helping out a fund like that. He said the stunt was inspired by his friendship with A.J. Foster, who was diagnosed with lymphoma 3 years ago. Well, congratulations on that. You know, that's I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. But soccer, Captain? Soccer? Really? Anyways, moving on. It would really, really suck. You know how when we were all in high school and we all heard these awesome stories about spring break in Florida? Well, apparently the party is over. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says that he has ordered the shutdown of all bars in the state for at least 30 days and limited beach gatherings to no more than 10 people. DeSantis also restricted restaurant occupancy to 50% as part of the most aggressive actions by the state so far to contain the coronavirus pandemic. The government left further beach restrictions up to local authorities, and Miami Beach officials responded with a total beach closure and an 11 p.m. curfew. Really? A curfew? Is that necessary? Florida now reports 192 confirmed coronavirus cases and 6 deaths, a worrying trend in a state with many elderly retirees. On Tuesday, Miami Beach issued an order closing all non-essential businesses, including restaurants, movie theaters, gyms, and fitness studios. The most popular parts of the beach closed to the public from 4:30 p.m. this past Saturday and are set to remain shut until March 19th, with Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber declaring that spring break in Miami is over after a state of emergency was declared. Instead of returning home when the famed party strip was closed on Saturday afternoon, many students continued the week of celebrations further down the coast or on other parts of the beach. I think I would too, just for the sake of it. Anyways, despite warnings at the entry of the beach advertising against mass gatherings and urging beachgoers to practice social distancing, the crowds of students continued to pour throughout Sunday. The Centers for Disease Control even greeted beachgoers with a floating billboard on Saturday, which urged sunbathers to avoid contact with each other who are sick. In close physical proximity with crowds appeared to disregard the warnings put forward by the CDC. Meanwhile, millions of Americans were holed up at home, many thrown out of work until further notice as offices, stores, and other businesses have been shut down. School was canceled for tens of millions of students, forcing parents to scramble for childcare or find ways to entertain their children. That is where I am right now. Anyways, a woman who was spotted an unusual animal in a Tennessee field captured a great video of an albino deer. Natalie Simmons said she and a friend Ashley initially thought there was a goat with the group of deer in a field off of Concord Road in Brentwood. so we can all drive there and check it on out. Simmons said it wasn't until they stopped to take the video of the animals that she realized the white creature was albino. Albinism, a genetic disorder that causes an animal's body to be free of pigment, is believed to occur about once in every 20,000 deer births. Albino deer are a protected species by a 2001 Tennessee state law that banned hunters from shooting the animals. Moving on. Like many of us, Nellie the cat loves her food. Her owner, Allison Riebel, said the feline lives to eat instead of eating to live. And Nellie's passion for snacks is so great that her humans have even managed to teach her dog-like tricks such as sit, fetch, high five by tempting her with treats. Now, Nellie, being a cat, doesn't always like to work in the order to fill her belly, though, and she recently set out on a covert mission in order to get her paws on the snack without her owners knowing it. Of course, she's a house cat. Why wouldn't she? Allison, who volunteers at the Wildlife Medical Clinic through the University of Illinois, had decided to treat her fellow volunteers to a simple homemade cookies. And knowing Nellie might have her eye on some of those, yeah, well, guess what? Old Nellie took a little bite out of each cookie. Good for you, cat. Them owners treating you bad, bite the cookies, each and every one. So, somehow, the crafty cat managed to crack open the Tupperware, after which she set about stealing the cookies one by one, taking a bite out of each one. Yeah, there was probably 20 cookies or so in there. Yeah. They look like ginger snaps or something like that. Yeah, why wouldn't they? Allison was only made aware of the theft when Nellie knocked something over, causing the owner to come and investigate. She found her loving cookies scattered among the floor, each one of them with a telltale bite mark on them, and knew exactly what her cat had been up to. Oh, the crafty cat. Though Nellie was probably somewhat not caring, because cats do not care about things like that, for some reason, the owner gave her praise and isn't mad at the cat for stealing the cookies. And you know the cat just doesn't care. Absolutely not. You know, there's been a lot of negative news lately. We're going to end on a positive note tonight before we get to the thought of the day. Down in Houston, Texas, an anonymous customer left the staff of a restaurant a $9,400 tip just hours after the county announced mandatory business closings. Irma's Southwest restaurant in downtown Houston said an anonymous customer left the major tip Monday, just a few hours after Harris County ordered bars, nightclubs, and restaurants to close amid the coronavirus outbreak. Hold tip to pay your guys over the next few weeks, the customer wrote on the receipt. The restaurant said it's planning to remain operating as a takeout eatery, but some workers could be sent home if there isn't a high demand. The eatery employees will split up the tip equally, each of them receiving about $300. The restaurant applauded this fantastic act of kindness. Let's get to it, shall we? First, we got to go to Twitter, find out what kind of clown Marty has for us. Hold on, I'm looking for it, Marty. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air, because we love the audience participation around here. Okay, Derek got me laughing on Twitter. Thank you, Derek, with the Ric Flair. I appreciate that. Oh, hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. You make me laugh. Thank you so much. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. What are you doing to cure the boredom of quarantine? Goddess Michelle, who's a hero among heroes among this, she says, well, since I am not quarantined at the moment because I have to continue to work until I get it, I am taking my few days off to run errands for elderly and get ahead on some cooking done at home because I don't want anyone leaving that doesn't have to. Now, Goddess Michelle is one of the heroes. She is a nurse. So let's give her a little bit of a round of applause for being a nurse and on the front lines of this coronavirus. Thank you, Michelle, for everything you and your colleagues are doing right now to keep us better. Anthony, I'm reading, and reading. Boy, there's a guy. Anthony's a tattoo artist. Kind of hard to do tattoos right now. Joe and his bandana. Observing and learning from current human behavior during the pandemic and protecting probable human response to an alien invasion or zombie apocalypse. Me too. Oscar, doing lots of stuff with my hands. Oh, I don't know if we need to know that. Ronnie, baked some rustic whole wheat bread, made corned beef and cabbage, cleaned house, and reading. See, I haven't started the house cleaning yet. Okay, I just haven't. I figure because when I get started, I can't stop. My house isn't messy, but there's a couple of cluttered areas I'd like to get rid of. I just pretend that I just walk by them and they don't exist. Chestnut, making cookies while going through withdrawals because our local art school is closed. This is where I teach people how to cut and polish rocks into beautiful cabocons, where I go to hammer on metal and play with fire to make jewelry to put my stones in. Need any cookies, Dave? Yes. Oatmeal raisin, please. Oatmeal raisin. Yes, I like oatmeal raisin cookies. Oh, Goddess Michelle replies, raisins and cookies are the reason why I have trust issues. I will eat your raisins. I like raisins. Let's go over to Facebook. Tim, trying to figure out what weapon to buy with my stimulus money. You know us Americans and guns. Screw medication. Kelly, managing 6 UFO groups and also still driving semi to Seattle, Washington at night. Thanks, buddy. Keep your eyes on the road. John, no change for me. Life goes on, same as always. Tom, I'm writing, and it's brutal. Gabe, what I always do, get going until I drop. So, in other words, nothing will change. Bobby, ghost hunt, of course. You can't get coronavirus from a ghost. William, I'm doing research work. V.E. Gaines, I'm working on a cure in my garage, making some of my test subjects doesn't die. If my test subject passes out, I add more lemon juice and I wave a roll of toilet paper at them to make them happy. Peace and love, Ringo Starr. Little Marky Spender. Quarantine? What's that? I just go to work, waiting to see if they actually shut us down. Keith, I'm writing book number 3. Cameron, I'll work 60-ish hours this week and we'll produce 2 podcasts, 4 in the next week, checking out who needs help here locally. Ryan Stacy, probably hasn't shaved in about 8 years, says, I'm shaving. Melinda, watched the Andromeda Strain 1971 movie. Seriously, I did, and it was really good. Kelly, I'm working. Apparently, people still need booze. Joel, mainly shouting at clouds. Science Bob, building equipment to look for UFOs automatically and controlled by artificial intelligence. Trying to work all the time alone with no sneezing, listening to my friend Dave every night and letting him keep me awake. Go give the guy and his peers $5 a month so he could keep me awake some more. Absolutely, Science Bob. We're going to end it right there and thank everybody for participating in today's Thought of the Day. We'll try and get through a lot more tomorrow. When we do it all again, you can find it on Twitter and on Facebook. We really appreciate that. Thank you, Captain Shirk, for a wonderful night of news on the SOR Newswire, and to Joshua Cutchin for coming on in, hanging out with us to make sure that we had a damn good show. I really look forward to his book coming out in spring. And working with Timothy Renner, who once again has fantastic hair and a very manly beard. That is going to be a great Bigfoot book. Just a fantastic Bigfoot book. So make sure you check it on out when it comes out. We're going to definitely bring them on the show for this as well. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be safe. Special thanks to everybody in our chat rooms on LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, YouTube, the SOR Space Travelers Club on our website, and everybody at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. You were fantastic tonight. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Hey, a big thank you to each and every one of you toughening it out right now, getting yourself all wooed up, because together, my friends,
We're watching.
we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a great night, everybody. We're going to do it all again tomorrow. Hope you all can join us. I look forward to it as well. See you later. My cough is getting better. It waited until after the show. Son of a bitch, I'm winning. Let's cut that signal. Cut that signal. Very cool. Very cool. I can take these off. Shake my hair a little bit. Oh, what are we all doing here? We need you to after show. I am after showing. Let me just close some of this stuff off. Close that. Close that. Leave that open. Close that. Excuse me. All right. All right. Sorry, I'm just getting everything sorted out here so I kind of know what's going on. All right. Hey, there's a chat room. Hey, Lee A. Dave, why did you shave your head? I didn't shave my head. You mean on the sides? I've always shaved the sides and the back. Ever since the beginning, because my sides get so sore, I can't even wear a ball cap. It's terrible. I do have thick hair. I totally do. All right, thank you. Just saying my thanks, everybody. One second here. I'm just saying my good nights to everybody. All right, so we can close that off. And close that off. That's closed. And all right, close that off. How are we doing? Dave could shave and go on RuPaul's show. No, I would go on RuPaul's show, but I'm not shaving. Dave, I thought you were going to shave your beard and dye it. I did. The color comes out after a few weeks. It's only just for men. Yes, I use just for men. Hard to believe, I know. Greco. What are you talking about? So naughty. Lee A, you send any show ideas to bookings at spacedoutradio.net. Corrence will get them. And let's see what else we got here. Yeah, how was Geraldine's meditation? I dropped in on that. I was going to jump in on that, but I hadn't. Hey, Science Bob, what are you still doing awake, man? Science Bob, what are you still doing up? It's like 3 o'clock in the morning for you, man. My feet are freezing. I knew I should have put socks on. I'm not doing braids. The only person I will allow to braid my hair is my daughter. That's it. That's it. Corrence, we got to get a picture of your mustache because you got one of them big, thick Tom Selleck type mustaches. I want to see that lip blade, man. Totally want to see that lip blade. Oh, sure. No, I will not interview Tyler Glockner. I want to talk to real people in this field, not fakers and forgers. Cornrows? No. All right. Slippers. I have shoes, Nikki. I do have shoes, but my feet are still cold. I should have put socks on, but I didn't. I'm a jerk that way. Hold on. Vicks inhaler. Let's see how this works. I do have a space heater, but they take up a lot of energy and I can't turn it on during the show. Because I have so much plugged in here, I can't. If I blow a breaker, not saying it hasn't happened yet, but if I do blow a breaker, then we're a little screwed. But it gives and takes. The studio will be warm in no time. Let's see here. Lee A. works with Alzheimer's and dementia patients. What a blessing you are to people. Yeah, what a blessing you are. Good for you helping out, Lee A. Dave, Vicks Bond on the bottom of your Yes, I do that when I go to bed. I do that when I go to bed with the Vicks Vapor Rub. Love Vicks on my feet. Feels good. Feels good to get some Vicks on the feet. Paraanthro. Audra. Ugh, some idiot wired the front of my house on one breaker. Oh no, you poor thing. You poor thing. Lee A. She pronounces it Lee A. She told me. Allow your daughter when she dresses. When my daughter was young, I had my toenails painted. I had my fingernails painted. If she needed dad to be her model when she was like 3 years old and had to put makeup, I did it. I was that guy. Leah. Lee. Vicks Vapor Rub gets into the nervous system that are all connected on your feet, and then it sends all the good stuff into your feet, up those nervous systems and all that. And so like Tia, Sia, or Pia. Okay. So that's what helps. The A. Anyways. Okay, I've got like 5 minutes here. 5 minutes. My little guy's been getting me up at like 7 o'clock in the morning. Am I in any type of lockdown yet? Up here? No. No, I'm not in any lockdown up here yet. That being said, they are telling people to stay home. They haven't closed any of the mills yet. Some of the restaurants have closed. They haven't gone as far as like closing liquor stores or anything like that. Eel? Why would it eel? Put Vicks on your throat and chest. I do that. I do that. I do that every show, by the way, except tonight. I forgot to tonight. Vicks inside the belly button? I've never tried that. Oh, sent me a stash on the phone. Oh, I gotta see this. Fuck yeah, I gotta see this. Where is it here? Oh, God, yeah. Oh, you guys gotta see this. This is a beauty. Hold on. Oh, yes. Yes, that is what we're talking about right there. Look at that power stash. Look at that power stash of Corinces. Oh my gosh, that is phenomenal. That might become my new screensaver right there. Little look at that there. Holy cow. Woohoo! That is beautiful. Oh, a nice team stump there too. Very nice. Very nice. Oh no, you couldn't see it due to the light. Oh, damn it. Damn it. That sucks. Oh no. No, 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 no. How can I do this? How can I do this? Hold on. I have an idea. Hey, Corey, send me that mustache picture to Facebook, if you don't mind. I'm waiting for it, Corey. The only time he sends me stuff to my phone. Oh my gosh, I need that mustache. Yes, I'm trying to correct it right now. If not, what I'll do, hold on. See how long it takes Corey to message me on Facebook. See if I can do this faster. Close. And we'll open that up again. Hold on. Let's go like this. And I'll go like this. All right, let's snap a photo of that. There we go. And then I'm going to send that to myself on Messenger. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. All right. Hold on. We're almost here. I've almost got it. And then what we do is we go like this. And we add this. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. Look at this, people. Look at that. This is totally cool. Hold on. It's coming. Look at that. Look at that gorgeous stash, people. That is gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Just going to move that over there, right there. She'll cover up the advertising there for a minute. There we go. Look at that. Look at that mustache. Hey, Tony from Wales, UK. How you doing, man? Thanks for dropping on in. Not drooling, Sandra. It's more about having a lot of respect for that. Look how good that looks. Look how good that looks in the system here. Beautiful. Oh, that just made my night, man. That just made my night. Oh, I'm so happy right now. So happy. Duding. Yeah, he needs some moose oil for that badass. That is good stuff. Very, very good stuff. Anyways, we're going to wrap this thing up here because my little guy has decided to start getting up pretty damn early. And I have to be able to function with him in the morning. I did not function today. I slept in until about 9:30 my time. But thank you so much, everyone, for hanging on out. We own the stash. As for Corey, there you go, Cor. Say goodnight to your stash. But thank you so much. We're going to do it all again tomorrow. Merle is here. Our guest with Merle, our special guest, is going to be Megan Gehring, Marine Megan from the Spreaker chat room. We're going to be talking about how to use astral travel and astral projection in paranormal investigation. Corey, I will call you tomorrow, and we'll have some fun. So good night, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it.